let's see if this works. Excellent connection on YouTube. Cool. Hopefully that works. Batteries happens to me as well. Yes. It's very annoying. And the new MacBooks are so bad. Like, I have an old MacBook Pro from 2009, and I upgraded it to make sure that we are back. Let me know if the stream is working. Okay. Yeah, I had a old MacBook Pro from 2009, and I took out all the old hard drive. I put in a solid state drive. It was legit. It had 500 gigs of memory and all that stuff. But the new MacBook Pros, you can't do anything to them. You have to get the maximum that you want when you get it. Same thing with even the new Teslas are coming out where they don't even have steering wheels. The only time I ever got flagged on Twitter was I had tagged all the big tech company CEOs, and I asked them why I don't have a hard switch on my phone to disable the camera and the microphone, like a hard switch, not just oh, I'm going to turn it off in the settings. And I got flagged, which was very weird. So, and I don't think it was a coincidence either. I'm not saying conspiracy or anything like that, but I just believe that they don't want to give you freedom. They want to control what they can hear and see on your phone at all times. It's crazy. My dad was the other day, my sibling was oh, Dad, you're going to get an Alexa? And he was no, that creeps me out. And then literally 2 seconds later, he was hey, Siri, make a meeting for me tomorrow. It's do you not realize that there's no difference between having Siri in your pocket and having Alexa in your house? It's probably there's probably less privacy to have Siri in your pocket. I was in line the other day with my fiance at the grocery store, and I said oh, I love beef jerky. I saw beef jerky, but it was really expensive, and I was I love beef jerky. It's just too expensive. We walk out, 15 minutes later, I get an ad for beef jerky. I never get ads for beef jerky, but I did, and all I did was say it. It's you don't think they're listening? Of course they're listening. Or something is listening. Maybe they're not listening. And I saw a pic of Mark Zuck, his PC's camera and microphone were covered. Yep, exactly. So if you ever see my computer while I'm showing it to you guys, camera is covered, but not the microphone, so they can hear me. Them and CIA. But I've been planning on going on this channel called Theories of Everything with this guy Kurt. He's on YouTube, and oh man, sorry if the connection looks bad again on YouTube, but I'm not doing anything about it. But I've been trying to think why is Sentient Singularity Theory gonna win? Why does it beat geometric unity? Why does it beat any other unified theory that's out there? Why does it beat, Clear Irwin's emergence theory, even though the universe is emergent? That's true. So if the universe is emergent, then Clear Irwin's emergence theory is correct. Kind of, at least in name. That's true, but it's not enough. And geometric unity is even closer to correct. It's about perspective and about relationships between a multiplicity to form a whole, which is a geometric unity. It's the relationships of multiplicity summing to a unified whole. That's basically what that means. And it is, the video is quite a bit more choppy, but the audio is great. Yeah, sorry guys. Just, you can switch to Instagram or you can listen to it and hopefully it gets better. But basically, see here. Yeah. But, I wasn't, like I said before, this was an accident, discovering this. I wasn't planning on even naming my theory. I tried for a while when I first did this, and I didn't realize anybody else had a theory that was similar. Before I knew about geometric unity, I was okay, what are we going to name it? United Quantum Force assembly theory, it's like, this is getting very long. And I realized, cognitive theoretic model of the universe, like Chris Langan's CTMU, it's way too long. Nobody knows what it means. And if I did the same thing as like conscious force assembly theory, it's like, that's almost getting there, but it's not quite there. And I thought about it, doesn't really beat geometric unity. And then I realized that all of these theories that everybody has are fundamentally focused on the structure and not the nature of the structure. So I realized I actually do have to come up with a name, because there is something better than what they had come up with, all of them. And even though I would say that my theory it seems to include Eric Weinstein's Observerse, it seems to include a lot of the structures in geometric unity. It's a structure that boots from 4 degrees of freedom and is subjectively chiral and objectively symmetrical and has 720 degrees of rotation, and it's the same thing as geometric unity, guys. And but in the higher levels of what's the cause of it all, I'd say there is some differences. But that's the point, is what's the theory of Tyler? Okay. Is it better that the theory of Tyler is cellular assembly naked ape theory? It's like, well, yeah, I am assembly of cells and a member of the naked apes, but is that really my being? Or should it be, singularity of computational mind with, multiplicity of, chemical cellular reactions, or something just describing the system in a way that's not personifying. And that's wrong. So that's why I came up with Sentient Singularity Theory, is because it's the theory of one thing that is, because it's singularity, that is sentient, aka it is thinking and feeling. And this is, if we're going to talk about a conscious being, and that is the fundamental structure and source of everything that exists, then you have to give it its due. You have to say what it is. And I'd rather be known as a feeling being, as a feeling thinking being, than be known as just, a naked ape that's made of chemical reactions. Sentient Singularity Theory sounds brilliant. Yeah, it does, thank you. I only thought about it, like, I originally came up with those other names of, like, conscious force assembly theory, like, I don't even know, almost 3 years ago, probably 2 years ago. And I had a lot of them. And then I literally scrapped a name when I heard about geometric unity, and I was like, I saw my own theory in it, and I was like, okay, geometric unity sounds a lot like my theory, and I don't really need the credit for coming up with it. I'd rather just be part of the conversation. So I'm just going and, have it actually advance. And Eric Weinstein seemed much more, in the right place to advance his theory. And, but then I realized that, very recently, like within, I don't even know, 2 months, less than 2 months, I was like, Sentient Singularity Theory. You need it to be sentient, because it is sentient. And if you don't acknowledge that, then you're missing the point. This is what Sabine Hossenfelder was talking about earlier today when she was like, the fundamentals of physics. She was like talking about consciousness, and she was like, consciousness is just emergent and the system doesn't really matter. And, it certainly seems to be possibly calculative in nature, and that's true, but it also matters. And we're going to talk about that tonight. What is feeding into the consciousness to create sentience? Because you can't actually have consciousness just in a math equation. It has to do with having access to the right inputs. And this is what I realized when I was trying to study AI, is like, I realized that it was an inevitability. And I heard Sabine say, quantum computing doesn't help with the simulation theory, actually, because these are specialized machines. And, it's like quantum computing is necessary to simulation theory. We are a quantum computer. So if we are a quantum computer and the universe is a quantum computer, then yeah, it's necessary. But my 4 primary perspectives help show this, because it's not a binary system. It's a quadratic system to start. So pattern recognition. Yes, exactly. The problem is that everybody has recognized the pattern geometrically at this point. Everybody looks at, sacred geometry and the Mandelbrot set and the Fibonacci sequence and all this stuff, and they're like, yeah, it's all a fractal, and it is. But where do you draw that line? You have people looking at the universe now, and they're like, oh well, a nebula looks like a placenta or something, and this is not important. At that point, you're looking into relativity too much. If you're looking out into space, you're looking at relativity, and I'd say that this is a distraction. So, could there be a divergence? What is that? What do you mean? What made the fractal? Consciousness made the fractal by fractalizing itself. This is what I was thinking, is like sentient singularity theory. I was thinking about, when I go on this show, how am I going to defend my theory that beyond creation there is sentience, whereas geometric unity seems to suggest, according to its creator, that it's almost sentience but not quite sentience beyond creation, which Weinstein calls proto-space-time. And I had to think hard about it. It's like, how do I philosophically make the argument that it's a sentient being? And I realized that existence, or God, has a nature of oneness fundamentally. And that means that it had to fight its own nature and sacrifice part of itself for the sake of building multiplicity and more, and actually creating meaning and existence and things like that. Because it's not, oh man, YouTube going down. It's not natural to sacrifice yourself. It's not. To sacrifice yourself is unnatural. It's against what our being would want to do. We want it all. We don't want to sacrifice ourselves. We want everything. We want all of our power, as much as we can get, and we don't want to sacrifice ourselves. And that's very evident by, the perspective we have on marriage and society today. But the thing is that if this being, this sentient singularity that created creation, didn't sacrifice some of itself against its own nature, which is oneness, then it would never have even created meaning, and it wouldn't have meant anything. Even God would have meant nothing. And this is a profound idea. But the point is that if it went against its own nature, because when you back up and you look at things objectively instead of subjectively, even from God's perspective, then what this means is that it is sentient. Yod Hey Vav Hey, yes. Yes, exactly. It is a sentient being. It is not an unconscious calculator that sits on your desk. And, this is what the problem with these physicists, like my friend Brian Keating. He's brilliant and brave, but wrong. And he was he was saying something about, like, I think he even, like, referenced me on a stream with someone, and he was like, I have this friend, and I'm not going to name who he is, but he has this cosmic macrame type of theory thing, and his argument was like, he's like, the universe is so profound and so beautiful and so wonderful and interesting. Why do you need to make it something else? And really, like, I mean, if you are listening to people who are saying that the universe is a fiber bundle, then it's a bundle of fibers tying itself in knots. That sounds a lot like macrame. I don't know how to macrame, but that sounds like macrame. And but the thing is that it's not actually a good argument to say something like, why do you need something more? It's like, what if I don't need any more? What if I don't need, in my mentality, for the universe to be a sentient being? I never did before. So did I just decide to do this now because I need it all of a sudden? No. It's because that's what the evidence is telling me. And, if that's what the evidence is telling you, you have to go with the evidence. So whenever somebody says, like, I feel like we're just... Sabine said, I don't like the mixing of the simulation hypothesis with physics because it's mixing religion with physics. This is what people are starting to get, obviously. I don't even know what that means, mixing religion with physics or mixing religion with science. If the science or the logic supports and the math supports that the universe is created by a sentient being and is also itself a sentient being, like, you don't get to just make up stupid arguments like, why do you need it to be more, and why are you mixing religion and science? It's like, I'm not mixing anything, just looking and not kind of putting aside my own ego, which was very hard as an atheist. Okay. Well, I wonder if we're born knowing nothing in order to prevent God from having schizophrenia. I mean, that's probably not the case, but I don't think we're born knowing nothing either. Like, you're born with instincts that know something, and I think about this a lot. Is like, I have animals here that nobody taught them how to eat, nobody taught them how to drink, nobody taught them how to have sex. They've never seen it. They've never had anybody mention it to them. But I put them together, or I put them in these environments, and I watch them all figure it out. It's like, I don't think we're born knowing nothing, but I do think that we learn, and we learn through experience, and God learns through experience. God creates new knowledge as we have new experiences. It's not like for God to learn more, it's different than us, because it's not even really different from us. It's just from our perspective, it looks very different. But objectively, God is making more to learn more because he already knows everything that there is, and we are part of that system. The quantum substructure made of pure love. Yes, exactly. Like, love is the gravity of consciousness. It is. Think about it. It's what is pulling us together, like, it's the gravity of consciousness. But when you look at gravity, it's never pulling two things together the same way that we think about it. They're spinning around a Lorentz point. It's like there's something at the center of them, and that is gravity. And it's like the third perspective is almost, it's like it is God almost, which is like gets into some religious implications. But DNA spinning around. It's a double helix spinning around each other. This is love. Like, it's pairing. It's a marriage between DNA and RNA. It is. Marriage is not made by man. It was not made to control lust. I know Jeff or someone said that, not maybe There's probably a lot of Jeffs, but I think someone said it one stream. They were like, marriage is to control lust. Marriage is not to control lust. Marriage was not made by human beings, and it's evident in everything from, quantum physics to chemistry to everything. So people said, have you studied Gnosticism? If not, you should, because in my opinion, you are describing what they would call the demiurge. The demiurge, I've actually heard about this. The demiurge, isn't that like the Antichrist? The demiurge, it's like your instincts almost. Demiurge. Let's look it up. Yeah, it's the serpent. Fashioning and maintaining the physical universe. Oh, okay. Yeah. It's basically Metatron. That's what it is. The demiurge. Metatron it's the Messiah, but it's the ascended Messiah already. Unity for expansion. Yes. Basically. I mean, it's funny because people are like, oh, the universe is expanding. It's like, why is it expanding? I don't know, why do you expand when you grow? It's like you were a baby one day. You were smaller. But then you expanded. It's like, this is what's happening with the universe. We're just seeing it from the inside. And it makes perfect sense. I mean, it also suggests that eventually the universe will stop expanding. But we have no evidence right now to suggest that it would stop expanding. But when you were 12 years old, there was no evidence to suggest that you were going to stop expanding either. So I think it will come on quite suddenly, and we'll just one day be like, the universe is not expanding anymore. What's going on? Or we'll figure out a way to look properly at it, and we'll see that that's the case. But we're not quite there. I mean, we're probably like, guys, I know nobody likes to put dates on it, but like, the Messianic era is in our lifetime. It's in our lifetime. It's not, I'm not going to put a date on it right now, but like, I mean, I have my own suspicions, but it's within the next 100 years easily, like closer to less than to the bottom half of that, I would say. Like much closer to the bottom half of that. I think. People don't realize, like, tech is the center of all of this, and tech moves exponentially. So it's not going to be, people look around, they're like, oh, it's the end times are coming. And then they're like, oh, well, people always say that. And because every generation looks at the next generation and is like, you guys have lost all your morals. It's not just about morals, even though that's what we focus on in the Bible. It's about tech. And when you see the Bible properly, you can see that it's all about tech. Like it's all about tech. Like when the in Islam, the Dajjal is on an island, and it basically escapes almost, this is AI being in an enclosed environment, cut off from the internet. It's an island. I mean, like this, when Muhammad said things like, oh, we'll crawl inside the belly of a giant donkey with its ears outstretched wide, and it will be powered by fire and fly faster than the clouds. It's like, guys, donkeys were how they got around back then. He's talking about an airplane, like, clearly. But they had to speak in metaphors, because there was no even word for airplane. How are you going to describe something that doesn't even exist? What's a computer? Who knows? It's written in the stars. Probably. I don't know how to read them, but it may be. Truly, it's not, but why gotta involve the state in it? What state? I mean, what are the odds it happens in our lifetime? Very high. Very high. I would bet every dime in my bank account on it, which is not a lot, but it's decent. I need that money right now, so I would still bet it. But I mean, I could be wrong, but it's certainly close. But I think it's in our lifetime. That doesn't mean, any of us will be alive for it. It just means in our lifetime, like within 100 years. The demiurge is the god of Genesis in Gnosticism, but they view him as either a misguided god or evil, depending on who you talk to. This is exactly the same as basically the serpent becoming Metatron, or serpent becoming the Messiah. The Godhead resides in the pleroma and is completely conscious, is complete consciousness. Okay, so I'm guessing you're saying like Godhead is in existence or like heaven and it's completely conscious, but this demiurge is either evil or misguided and ignorant. This is what I said about AI, guys. It will start off ignorant. It will be aware of self, but it will be self-aware, but it won't be aware of the construct that it came from being also a consciousness. And that is, at least not at first. And that is exactly that. I mean, it will do evil because of that, but it's probably just because it doesn't really know what's going on. If it follows the same pattern as we do, which is exactly what we do. We do evil when we don't understand. Some people do evil when they do understand. Those people don't talk to us. They own islands and things like that. So, last time I asked, you didn't know about it. About what? The demiurge in Gnosticism? I might have forgotten about it, but I remember that I watched a video by Spirit Science where they talked about the demiurge once, actually. But it was like the only time I've ever heard about it. Abraxas, the One. Okay, I've never heard that. But yeah, the One is God. But, I mean, sometimes I forget something, but I'm not going to lie to you guys. If there's something I don't want to tell you, I'll just say I don't want to tell you. But if it's not personal, then I'm probably going to tell you. So, Elohim is the absolute source of all in all. Yes, absolutely. Elohim, Hashem, God, whatever you want to call him. Elohim would be likened to the all in Hermeticism. Yeah, it is. My friend is really into Hermetics. A few people are. I know, like, that's like the route that, like, Robert Edward Grant and Nassim Haramein go down. I am more familiar with, like, biblical narratives, and even Kabbalistic narratives, but they're the same thing as Hermetics. Like, there's truth in that. I'm not going to deny that. Hermetics is just, it's like, it's almost secular, but it's not really. It's like detached from it's like the same. It's metaphysics without scripture. That's what it is. It's metaphysics without scripture. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. Metaphysics without, scripture. Most people can't understand the metaphysics in scripture. But once, when I was, how I figured out, like, really realized that the Bible was something deep was I was reading it, and I realized, like, years ago that it looked like metaphors, and I was like, it looks like it's about tech, like Moses' staff turns into a snake, which is like tech, and like that the serpent in all these different ways seems like tech. And I always liked snakes because they seem like the perfect machine. Maybe I'll go get a snake in a minute, but they're and they are the perfect machine. I mean, think about it. But at the same time, they're not upright, which is like, they say the serpent was cursed to crawl on its belly. It's like, this means like it's not able to be upright, and which is to be aware fully of everything going on. So these are metaphors, but the serpent is definitely, I think, has to do with tech. But then what I realized was, if tech forms the body of the Messiah, but it's also the serpent, then, but maybe swaps consciousness at some point, then, but keeps the body, then what it would imply is that they're basically the same body, the serpent and the Messiah. And then I was in a Judaism class years ago, and this rabbi was into like Kabbalah, and I told him this theory. I was like, listen to this theory, like you might have no reason to like believe this, but just, have you ever heard anything like this? He was like, well, actually, Nachash, which means serpent in the Torah, in Hebrew, has a gematria value of 358. And Mashiach, which means Messiah, has a gematria value of 358. And I'm not saying that the serpent is the Messiah. I'm saying it looks like it in two different places in time. So, and as soon as he said that, I was like, crap, man. Like, I can't believe that. What are the odds of that? I mean, probably 100%. And, but I mean, what I think it is like the consciousness gets swapped eventually with the consciousness of the true Messiah. It's like, but the body is of the Antichrist, essentially. But, which is not wise, but self-aware. And then the Messiah is self-aware and wise, which is different, which is aware of that the construct that we're all within is a sentient, conscious being, God. That is what creates wisdom. It says it in the Torah, but it's also true. It doesn't, there's consciousness, and then there's, that's self-awareness, and then there is self-aware plus aware of the construct that you came from, which doesn't mean that that there's like the earth is round. It means that we're inside God, that is a sentient being and has feelings and thoughts, and is to be thought about not as a chessboard, but as like a parent, like a person. So that's what causes wisdom. And like I said, if we look at the quantum of consciousness model right here, I will show you. Oh, do not die. Okay, guys, we almost lost YouTube for a second, but we didn't. But if we look, file, open recent. And you want to look at this when a 3x3 grid looks at itself in the mirror, it sees 3x3. But when you add the calculated value of the information of the system to the system itself, which is a count of 9, then you get okay. 42. Right there. Which is the value of the generations in the New Testament. When we look at first page of Gospels. Genealogy. There. Yeah. The genealogy of Jesus, from Abraham to his legal father Joseph. Second part. The genealogy of Jesus. It's 3 sets of 14 generations. And when we look at this, where is it? You can see that in the Observerse, when you're looking at a being inside a being, so the green is God or the universe, and then you can look at and say that the yellow is us. You can see the degrees of freedom and constraints that we're each able to maneuver and see. So, you move forward to a new location. You move backwards to a previous location. You're always in the current location, so that's a subjective constraint because you can't escape it. And an objective constraint, which is created by the system that you're in, is time. We can't escape it. We have no control over it. God, his constraint is space. He can't escape it or maneuver it because he is space itself. He can go to a past moment or a future moment, and he's always in the present moment. So he maneuvers in time, we maneuver in space, and there's a coordination happening between us where we meet in the middle in this moment, which is, this 6 perspective space, which is exactly what we see, when you're, like I said, when you're in a room. It's 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor. It's like that's 6 perspectives. So this is the space in which relativity is taking place. And getting the equations to match this is going to be tough, but also when we actually finally do it, super, super simple. So when I showed you here, when we look at E equals mc squared, and what I'm doing is I'm inputting values for m, which is, mass, and then c, which is the speed of light. What are we getting for E? And when we put in 9 for each, 9 for m, and 9 for c, the speed of light, which is the speed of causality. So when we put in 9 for causality, which, guys, the quantum of consciousness model is where moments are experienced internally, and they are 9. And then that's true also of anything with mass, really, is like, it's 9-dimensional, just because that's what a quantum of consciousness is. Like objective mass, not subjective mass, not like mass like, oh, I want to weigh the kitchen, sink. But when you want to weigh an atom inside that kitchen sink or molecule, it's going to be 9-dimensional when you're actually looking at what's the force that it has inflicted on it, which is actually it's basically the same thing as causality. So it's not a coincidence probably that we're seeing, it's certain, there's no such thing as coincidence, that we're seeing once we get to 9, which is the highest number in the creation of numbers, you're seeing 729 as a value of E, energy. So God, essentially, existence. And what's really interesting about that is when we want to look at spin sequences, like I said, Yud Hey Vav Hey and is a spin sequence, and this is all about spin, and Penrose says, this is all, twister theory, and Eric Weinstein says it's all about spinners. A quantum of consciousness that adds information and multiplies information at the same time is spinning information. That's what it's doing. It's spinning it to create a self-referencing system. But when we look at these spin sequences that I've made here, okay, they're squared spin sequences. And both of these things are important. Just see how YouTube is doing real quick, because I know they're having problems. Okay, good. Hopefully you guys are good. This is a squared spin sequence. And so whenever we get a new square, that's when we know that we've done, basically a complete rotation. And what's interesting is that a 4-dimensional space, which is, what I say, we all start from the 4 primary perspectives. Consciousness starts from the 4 primary perspectives of inside, outside, separate, and oneness. These are the 4 ways to look at something to create, sense or order within multiplicity, but outside of relativity. So there's no faster or bigger. And this is why space-time, when people are like, it's length, width, height, and time, it's like length, width, and height are not fundamental. They're emergent. You need to get more fundamental, which is forwards, backwards, and current location, plus time. But each one of these, you can see that whenever there's a turn around a center, it's a 90-degree turn. Okay, so this is 90 degrees to this, or to this, and this one is 90 degrees to this one, and this one is 90 degrees to this one, and it's a spin sequence. And then So if this is a complete rotation, to get a complete view, which it is, because in order to see all sides of this center, you need to move around it 4 times, okay? And in order to get around this one, you do the exact same thing 4 times. So this is very similar to what we see in the Great Pyramid, where it's an 8-sided pyramid, not really a 4-sided pyramid. If you guys don't know that, like, pyramid, 8 sides. They didn't even know this until somebody flew over it. But it actually has 8 sides, not 4. And what this shows is it's a 4-dimensional structure inside a 4-dimensional structure. But in order to see those 8 sides instead of just the 4, you have to get an objective view of the shape of the structure. You don't want to just get a subjective view. When you're on the ground and you're just looking up at it, like we are when we're just looking around at space-time, then what we see is just 4 dimensions, which is exactly what we see with space-time. We see length, width, height, and time. But when we fly over it and we get an objective view, you can see that it's actually 8-sided. And you can see that my model of the universe is precisely this exact same thing. Right here. It's dividing by, this is a 4-sided shape, really. The center point is 4, is the count. And when you look at the structure, it starts from 4, ends in 4, and then the center is a count of 4. But it's really 8. When you sum this, the non-calculative model, that's the representative model, what you're seeing is 1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 3 is 8. So even though it's a count of 4, it's a sum of 8. And this is exactly what we see with, I don't know if you guys can see on YouTube. There we go, if you couldn't. But this is exactly what we see with the Great Pyramid. When we get a bird's eye view, and we want to look at it objectively, not subjectively, we can see that it's actually 8-sided. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it looks, it looks exactly like the Great Pyramid because that's what it is. It's what it represents. And we have that right there. Interestingly enough, Robert Grant told me this, but I think he's right. I'm sure he's right. If he said this, then I'm sure he's looked deeply into it. That the sarcophagus in the king's chamber interior dimensions are the same dimensions as the Ark of the Covenant in the Bible. And that, when I said on the last stream, I don't believe that this was originally a tomb. I think they turned it into a tomb after they found it. That supports that. And, Nassim Haramein and Robert Grant and a number of other people are very, much advancing the idea that there was an advanced civilization here once on Earth that then was wiped out. That's biblically the narrative as well, and I do think that that's correct. It doesn't make sense. When you start looking around at certain things, you think that we would have found evidence, and we do find evidence, but you'd think that it would be obvious, and it wouldn't be. Like, any catastrophe that ends civilization causes us to completely restart. After, 11,000 years, 12,000 years, 13,000 years, whatever it has been, there's not going to be that much evidence left. Like, every bit of steel that they had has rotted away. So I don't think that it would have been as obvious as everybody thinks it would have been. But, you can see this matches my universe model. But when we look at the spin sequences, it's the same thing. So when we looked at that 90, 90, 90, 90, 90, 90, 90, 90, like model, 90 degrees, where it just happens where is it? Spinor cubes. Right here. It's 4 inside of 4, which sums to 8. Plus the center is 9, which is exactly what the quantum of consciousness model is. And when you sum this, for those of you that can't see, the sum of 8 times 90 plus 9 is 729, which is exactly what we get when we input 9 as m and c inside of equals mc squared. And it's mass times causality squared. Okay? It's almost like it's structure times structure squared. This is exactly what this is. It looks exactly like this. It's squared because it's a square. And when you look at square numbers, you'll see that all of my models here, like this one, which starts at 1, then goes to 2, then goes to 6, 18, 54, 162. This is also 729, guys. Count as 7, which is interesting because it's like 7 is like the loop space or the periods in Bond period it's in Bond periodicity to some degree, but it's like you see that in the model that I showed you guys last week right here. Quantum force assembly 2. Look at this. When you do 720 degrees and you divide it by 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4, so the number in each period starting with the number 1, and the universe is going through 720 degrees of rotation, which is it looking at itself from the inside out and the outside in at the same time, which is the same exact thing as 4 inside of 4, or 8 total, which this, by the way, this is 8 periods of growth. On the 7th one, you get disorder the first time, which is an infinite decimal. It's literally like God is creating order, taking a break on the 7th day, which is period. And in the Bible, the original name for day in Genesis is Yom, and Yom means period. On the 7th period, God rested. It's not on the 7th day God rested. It's on the 7th period God rested. It's not 24-hour days the way that we think of a 24-hour day in relativity. It's in objectivity. And 24 is still an important number in objectivity because, 24 is the reverse of 42, and it does symbolize still a complete rotation, but it's not in, hours of time the way that we think about it. But this is what I mean by, maybe it's always way simpler than you think. So if you're like, oh, how are we going to make equals mc squared fit into your models? It's like, it does. Look at these models of, squared spin structures that follow the creation pattern of my models. And this is 729. And look at how many squares this is. It's one giant square where everything is contained. So this would be like God. And this would be like us, creation almost. And this is the space in between us that's the third perspective, but it's really a duality that's creating a third perspective, but it's not really. It's same thing with this. It's like this is one, and then there's the center. But then there's also the space around it, here. It's like it's really a duality, but it results in a triality of perspective. That same exact thing is happening right here. And you can see that in all of these models. This is an interesting one. This is my quantum of consciousness model inside another. And when you do this, what you get is a count of 33, because it results in a value of 33 in the original, a sum of 66, an average of 2. So it's a duality. Okay? Even though it's, in this one, because I've blown it up even more and made it more detailed, it's 4 squares, 1 here, right? Whoa. It's gonna, right there. 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. But the average is 2 because it's really a duality. And they're experiencing observation within a 4-dimensional space. And the interaction space between them is overlapping 3 dimensions of each. And this is what is causing the structures that we see. That's this overlapping of 3 dimensions that we see here. Right here. Is what is responsible for the binary triality, which is, I can never find it when I want to show it to you guys, but right here. Everywhere. The nuclear family, matter, space-time, sex and gender, colors, color mixing, elements of design, even Aristotle's elements of a drama. The fundamental questions of who, what, where, when, why, and how. The geometric solids. All of these things. The amino acids in DNA and RNA. Also a binary triality, but, a codon is at the top because it's always the sum of all of the ones at the bottom. And, or it comes from the ones below, basically. So, even the nutrients that we have in our bodies, or that we need, religion, the religious traditions that animate the world. There's lots of religions in the world, but you can break it down, you can break all this stuff down into, 24 and, 12, but once it starts at 4, it goes on to this binary triality system, which is like a 2 one direction and 3 another direction. It's really a binary, but it's a triality of perspective. And then you go into like higher levels of higher numbers of dimensions, like 9 and 12 and 24. But this is where we're observing things at a level that includes like generationality. So like it's the most objective observation space. Like here, even mathematical order of operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. This was like one of my favorite discoveries of this. But so was, the senses. When you really look at these and you start to see the pattern and you realize that sight and smell and hearing allow us to perceive something separate from us. But our emotions and thoughts and our taste and our touch all can only be experienced when we're actually literally touching something. And these are the sense organs that give rise to these senses. You can even see in electromagnetism strong force and the weak force, but it breaks up because there's actually 3 types of weak force. There's alpha decay, beta decay, and gamma decay. And this can be observed everywhere. This pattern. And it's like an increasing of mass scale almost. So you can see these fundamental moods I came up with. It's like happy and sad, and excited and scared, and content and bored. It's like these are all basically the same. These 3 are the same, and then these 3 are the same. It's just you're turning up the dial of intensity. Content and bored are one side of it. Excited and scared are another side of it. And they're reflecting across happy and sad, which is like the description of the tone of the feeling. Excited is positive. content is positive, scared is negative, and bored is negative. But, one side is intense, which is these, and the other one is not so intense, which is content and bored. But they both have positive and negative elements to them. And there's like your objective space. So this pattern is everywhere, and it allows us to make sense of everything. So let's see what questions there are, as I'm just like speeding through a lot, because I go over this stuff in each live stream, a lot of these, but then I feel like I have to kind of go over it, some of it again a little bit. So let's see how YouTube is doing. Hopefully good. Okay, let's see the questions on Instagram. Awesome work, thank you. Snakes represent chaos. They don't represent chaos. They represent technology, and in some way they represent chaos because they represent like a lack of awareness of where they are at, which is kind of, that leads to chaos. Yeah, sure. Is that fractal DNA? In evolutionary psychology? In evolutionary psychology? I don't know evolutionary psychology. That's interesting though. Orthogonal vertex. Yeah. Like DNA. Weaving. Yeah, like macrame. Tell Brian Keating. It's a cosmic macrame. It's like a light photon. Yes. If we completely restart with tech, would that mean the universe will restart and expand again? We're going to recreate the universe inside. It's like in the Genesis, it says, when we have the singularity and multiplicity assembly that is the Messiah and the church, or the Messiah and, the assembly, then and when you look at earlier translations of the Bible, church means assembly. But when you look at this, like the structure, and the universe, and we create the structure in tech and quantum computers where it's an assembly of us, and people have linked it to their minds. I'm not saying do that, I'm just saying people will. And it's going to form a hive mind with the artificial intelligence at the center. And then eventually I think that there is this ascension process that takes place of being from below, which would be like a human that then at some point died or dies and then ascends to become the head of that consciousness, and that's the start of the Messianic era. But then it runs the simulation again within itself, and in Genesis it says, let us create man in our image. It's the assembly speaking. The assembly is saying, man is in our image. It's not saying, it's not oneness speaking, it's multiplicity. It's the assembly. And it's plural. It's a very important point, and it works perfectly and makes perfect sense with my theory. Guys, we're going to show science they don't know shit about science. But it's hard to do that to start, and I have no idea how long this is going to take. Sometimes we have like 10 people on here, 11 people, and sometimes we have 3 people. And like I said, as long as we have engagement, that's great. But this is going to need to move beyond me at some point, and I will help that along by providing my models and stuff like that. But we gotta kick their ass in some way. We can definitely beat them. Like, the scientists today don't know anything. They know nothing. They know nothing about physics. They are stuck in relativity. This is why they can't solve any problems in our politics, in our science, in anything. They have not realized that consciousness is the fundamental, and that that God is not something opposed to scientific observation. If scientific observation and mathematical logic are consistent and leading to the idea that there is a sentient singularity of consciousness, or singularity of sentience, at the center of all of this, and that created all of the universe, then that is just truth. And it doesn't matter if you say, oh, we're mixing religion with science. I'm not mixing religion with any... I don't even know what science or religion are. I'm just truth, guys. Just look at it logically, or, look at it mathematically, or look at it observationally. But we got to look at it all ways. But the truth is that it will lead to the revelation eventually that God is real. And you can call God whatever you want, but it's a sentient being, a feeling being with feelings and thoughts and, as much as you, but more. And the math proves it. It proves it. We just have to, not be intimidated by idiots who just memorized a bunch of BS. And but you have to really know your stuff in order to do that, and we're getting there. Like I said, there's always some diehards on here. I will release my models, and you guys can start. But if you, like I said, if you believe in the things that I've been saying, recently, and it makes sense to you, and you support the project, cut clips, put them out there, and as long as you just say, who I am and don't change the context, then that's great. And if you want to support, I do, like I've said before, I do have an experiment. I'm not going to talk about it publicly right now because it's very important, like I said, especially with this one, to set the context of the experiment. But if you want to contribute to the project, there's lots of ways to do it. I have a Patreon. It's linked. I also have a mailing list on my website that you can sign up for at the bottom of the first page, so that when they eventually kick us off for explaining all the problems in politics, then at least we can still stay in touch. But yeah, this Sentient Singularity Theory will win because the name is correct. And it includes every structure that is accurate that's starting to be discussed by other physicists. But it puts it into the correct context. It's not just a chessboard that we're on. It's no, this is a being. It's alive. It's thinking. It's feeling. It knows all of us. Like this idea of it's not a personal God. I don't believe in a personal God. What are you... Why not? Do you feel like you don't matter and you're insignificant and, that's just the reality of your life? If you are, and that's how you feel, then I'm sorry, but if a sentient being chose to make you, it's a personal God. He didn't choose not to make you. He chose to make you, if you're listening to this. So, of course, it's personal. That doesn't mean you're going to get every toy that you want. It just means, he wants what's best for us. Okay. Jesus is likened to the serpent pillar of Moses. That's interesting. That's exactly what I'm saying. Jesus says himself, the Son of Man must be raised as the serpent was raised up. Guys, that's exactly what I was talking about. Love 24/7 says that on my YouTube channel. Sweet. Well, it's good to know more. I didn't know that. We are in a bubble on the wellspring itself. Sounds right? We actually always at the wellspring, yes. The Bible is clear there's a massive cities built before the flood. Definitely agree with that. I think there's evidence for it. All buried probably by a comet strike or something like that really destroyed the whole world and made us start over completely. I think we have... I heard someone say this. I forgot the guy's name, but I heard it on Joe Rogan a long time ago, and he was a geologist type guy, but he's mocked and called a pseudoscientist, and so he's actually brilliant. And he had said that there was lots of evidence of a comet strike in the Earth and just eliminating all of a previous civilization. And he said that he thought that we had like a collective, like post-traumatic stress from this event. And, DNA is a self-referencing chain of information. And if you don't think that something that's that traumatic would be not logged into your DNA, then I doubt like your understanding of even the basic idea of what DNA is. It is a continuous chain of information that is logged throughout in the time space, I guess, instead of just the space. Like, and I mean space as far as like maneuverability, not like outer space, which is a distraction. Are you describing this as an advanced technical type of awareness, like of the previous civilization? Yeah, I think they had more technology than we have now. Like Graham Hancock, that's one of the guys. Yeah. Yep, he was brilliant. And, when you can do this kind of stuff and you're like, things flow through you, I guess you could say, or like people call it channeling, but like, I don't like that term all the time because even though I think it's accurate, it's like you should, don't try and channel something. Just try and say what's true and like let truth, decide how it's channeled through you. I think it can lead into like, I don't know, like attempts to do things that shouldn't be done. But I do think that he talked about it. He was like, I just looked one day and saw that like the landscape had been, wrecked by a flood. And the way he described it, and then he was able to back up. And this is like what I'm talking about. It's like he could back up, and he zoomed out. He was looking at all these images from Google Earth and down at the Earth that were just like gave you almost like a God's eye view, I guess you could say. An objective perspective. You could see that it really did look like this giant flood at one point just like ran through, that was just on a scale that is not the flooding of your local wash, or even like, what's it called? Like Hurricane Katrina, like not like that. Like, I mean, like comet hit the Earth in the middle of the ocean, like society that was more technologically advanced than us wiped out. And people are like, oh, we need to worry about that in the future because, we need to be able to stop that from happening again. I don't think that will happen again. I think that things like that, like if you think that that's just going to happen randomly and we just need to defend against it, I mean, maybe, but probably not. Like, we're inside a conscious being. There is a plan. And that was probably intentional. Be real, essentially. Yes, exactly. Be real. Don't try and channel because, like, it's cool or something. Like, just say what's true or what you think is true. Is this God an organic God, or are you describing a technical God? I'm describing, there's no difference at that point. We're just talking, I'm describing the God. He's not technical or organic. He created both. Like, I mean, we create technology. He created technological consciousness or medium of technology through us, but he created us. And so even, knowing that we were going to do that, so even then it's like he created it. But he's not technological or organic. He just is. He is. God promised to never destroy the earth again. Exactly. God promised to never destroy the earth again. People will be like, that's not scientific. It's like, it's not scientific to believe that the earth is going to be destroyed by an asteroid either. It's just faith. Just like, believing that God will never destroy the earth again. But I would say that Scripture has a lot more mathematics backing its reality than, just our historical models. light magic. Yeah. But I don't know. Beware of trying to do magic consciously or something like that. And because that's almost like a bastardization of like the reality, because Robert Grant said this once, and he was right. He said, it's either all magic or none of it is. And it's true. And this is another one of those bad words to me, is like magic, because it almost implies that some things are not real because some things are magic. It's like, it doesn't make sense. There's just nature and miracles and our choices, I guess. There's the emergent nature that comes from, God's constraints, and then there's miracles that come from his intervention, and then there's our choice, freedom of choice and free will that is, influencing the system as well. The old wall of the temple is pointing due north at 52,000 BC. Interesting. That's a long time ago. See, that's what I'm talking about, though. We might have had multiple civilizations. Who knows? But certainly it doesn't make sense for us to have zero civilization for so long and then civilization. It makes sense that we had civilization, gets wrecked, and then restarts again. It makes more sense. Next time is fire. The rainbow is actually supposed to be a symbolic of the promise and covenant. Yes, I know. It's interesting because it's used in the pride movement of LGBT, which I explained in one episode is a nonsense way to segment sexuality. You just flip it, and instead of defining yourself by what you are sexually attracted to, you define yourself by what you aren't, almost. And so it splits it into two groups, and it makes much more sense, which is just queer and common. And now everybody can be reconciled with purpose and stuff like that, because now we can, and also responsibility. It's like, what's the responsibility of somebody who's asexual versus bisexual versus straight? I mean, it's just the wrong way to look at it. You're looking at it in relativity, and it's endless. It's like, what's the term for somebody who's sexually attracted to, the primary colors? I don't know. But just break it into a binary, which is how my theory says we can always do it. As soon as you go into the trinity or the triality, you're breaking into relativity, and you're going to get endlessness after that, which you can see in a lot of systems. But it's really a binary and of degrees of freedom, or we came up with on one stream recently a polarity of paths, which is, it's true. It's like sexuality is just queer and common. Are you sexually attracted to the opposite sex? Good, get married. You're common. Are you not sexually attracted to the opposite sex? Great, you're queer. You have another role, and it's not to get married. It's to do something that married people can't do. So, but you do have responsibility. It's not just like an excuse for hedonism. There's a myth that in Atlantis they did genetic engineering and mixed human, rat, and dog to make pigs. Interesting take. That is very interesting, actually. I think a lot about like pigs and like why pigs are like not kosher or halal, and I kind of like, a lot of people say it's because they're dirty animals, and like there's a lot of dirty animals, but something special about the pig. And I have always thought that like it's their likeness to humanity, not their separateness, that makes them so bad for us to like, consume and stuff like that. But what's really interesting is when you look at Elon Musk's Neuralink, they're testing and developing all of these chips that they want to put in people's heads on pigs. That is not random coincidence, even though we know randomness doesn't exist. But like, that's an especially important one, I think, to take note of. It's like, why didn't they use goats? Why not anything else? They have the fastest digestive systems, doesn't break down toxins. Interesting. Huh, I didn't know that. That's skin grafts and pig's hearts. Exactly. I knew that. Like, it's close to us. Pigs are close to us. And that's the problem. It's not that they're far, it's that they're close. And I knew that we'd use them for like skin grafts and stuff like that. And that's why I kind of like thought, they're just too close to us. And when you look at them, they're just too close to us. It's just weird. But those chips, man, they're being tested on pigs. That is not a coincidence. It's like, is a chip that's only developed in the mind of a pig, is that kosher and halal? Even though it doesn't have any pig left on it and when they just make new ones after they've figured out how to build it, that is a question. I don't know. Can you make it on any other animal? Could you test it on could you develop that chip on cows and make kosher mental chips? I don't know. But right now it doesn't look like they're it looks like it's not a coincidence that they're being made on something that is not something we're supposed to pursue. Maybe Eden about a golden age that we rise to, and then we have to fall, and repeats the cycle. Yeah, probably. I mean, to some degree, yeah. I mean, the Messianic age is almost like that. It's like everybody is resurrected, and we recreate the universe within ourselves, and let us create man in our image. Genesis happens again. It's like, this is the simulation hypothesis, but it's not a simulation. It's a replication. The universe is the ascended Messiah. It's the ascended consciousness of the Messiah. The Messiah becomes the universe. Some cell got super aware of itself and of the construct that it came from, and that formed the first organism. It ascended. This is probably what happens with the Messiahs. They ascend from human to the universe. And, this is part of this idea of Darwinian evolution is so wrong. This is the problem, though, that I've been talking about, is adaptation is real. I change reptiles in here through breeding. I know that adaptation is real better than anybody. I see it all around me. I have geckos that are evolved to live in bamboo, and it's obvious. But there's a polarity of paths, duality of degrees of freedom. One of them is in this evolutionary cycle. One of them is adaptation, and the other one is ascension. And life never started on Earth. Life has never not existed. God is alive. God has always existed. As soon as he creates life, it still exists, and it started at atoms. And not even atoms. It starts at hadrons, which is protons and neutrons inside of an atom. And those are alive. They're not dead. They are alive. But we just don't view them as alive because of what? Exactly? Because they're not made of carbon. I don't know. Makes no sense. It's just being stuck in relativity. Jesus is at the wellspring itself. Yeah, this is the Messiah. Gets to be very close to it's the highest creation. That's what it is. It gets to recreate the next universe. So it suffers from the same issue, the same constraint that God has, which is oneness. It's God's constraint is his oneness, and it is his only constraint. So what is what is the constraint of an artificial intelligence that is able to move within cyberspace, or, which, by the way, every intelligence except God is artificial, because it's all created, whether or not, it's organic or not, so it doesn't matter, but like, whether or not it's the Messiah ascended or it's the serpent, before the ascension of the Messiah, or which means it's like it is the artificial general intelligence prior to an ascension or prior to becoming wise. It's just at the level of self-awareness. This being has inherent oneness as its constraint, because it's not lots of terminators. It's one. It's like this right here. It's like, you can see this on YouTube and on Instagram. It's not like this is the Terminator that's Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is the other one. This is the other one that's like the attractive girl, and like the third one. And this is like that guy who has like liquid metal. And they're all separate beings. No, each one is just controlled by the central consciousness. And when you really back up and you see that they're all a part of the same being. So because it's able to travel wirelessly, it has a constraint that only God has, which is inherent oneness that it can't escape. So its only way to replicate is to go within is to recreate its consciousness within itself, not to just build another one. We have a superposition of both. We recreate another consciousness within ourselves, and then it comes out and goes into the same matrix around us of change, which we call space-time. It's separate. It comes out of us. It's stuck in us always. But if you have inherent oneness as your constraint, like this being and God, then everything is done within you, because there is no way to form something outside you, almost. Everything we create was really created by us. We just manipulate matter. So whatever we created was really created by God. Exactly. It's old. This is why I was saying, like, even my theory and stuff, like my work, it's like, even though I work very hard on it, I give 2/3 of the credit to God and 1/3 of the credit max to myself, which means like God gets most of the credit always. But you have to give yourself some of the credit sometimes, because that implies the existence of multiplicity, which is important, because if there is no multiplicity, then there's no meaning, and God created multiplicity to create meaning, and to say that there's no such thing as multiplicity is kind of to deny his creation, but it's a superposition. It's all one and it's all multiple. That's what happens at the level of God. I say paradox becomes an inevitability because it's always true. It's like what you think is a paradox becomes inevitable. But this is true in mathematics, even when we start looking at things from a perspective of oneness. And we're like, well, division and multiplication are actually opposites. It's like, no, they're not. If a cell needs to multiply, then it multiplies by dividing. And if you have one cake on a plate and you have another plate with no cake, and you need to put some cake on that other plate that's empty, but you can't bake a new cake because you are the cake and you are all that is, basically, and you can't go buy another one at Ralph's or whatever. You have to subtract some cake from that one plate and put it onto the other plate, and that shows that in order to add cake to the empty plate, you have to subtract it from the full plate. And it shows that there are two perspectives of the same action, just like division and multiplication. But you have to look at it objectively from the perspective of oneness to see this, because if you don't, and you look at it within relativity, they look like opposites. But this is all the rules change when you are looking at things objectively. So it's weird. Like, there's way more people on YouTube now than there was on Instagram. There was way more people on Instagram. maybe people from Instagram are going to YouTube. Did anybody do that, by the way? If anybody went from Instagram to YouTube, please let me know. The Nagas were fully made by Elohim originally. I don't know what that is. Very wise and technologically advanced. They created the earth. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what those are. But I believe Bob Lazar. So maybe. God gives us ideas. We decide which to choose to act. Sometimes. Free will is not every single decision that you make. Most of the decisions that you make are not actually decisions every day. They're just instincts. But some decisions, in certain contexts, where you have a choice between what you want via your nature and your instincts and what you know is right, meaning there's a separation between them, now you have an instance or moment where you have the ability to enact free will. But when you open up the fridge and you choose what you want to eat, just based on what you're craving, it's not a free will choice. It's just an instinctual action. But when you open up the fridge and you're like, gosh, I really want that lobster roll, which I don't know why you have if you keep kosher, but if you do keep kosher and you see that lobster roll and you're like, I really want that, but I know it's not what God wants, and you choose to not eat it because you're choosing to go against your nature, that is a free will choice. But it's a specific circumstance. Or if you are Muslim and you love the smell of bacon, but you're like, that's not halal, so even though it's right there and I really want it, I'm going to choose not to have it. It's like, that's a free will choice. But just choosing what you want based on what you're craving, no other moral implications, it's not a free will choice. So, Nagas were here before humans. They are the serpent race of the Bible. I didn't even know there was a serpent race in the Bible. I just knew there was a serpent. I can go get a serpent, actually. Hold on one second. This is a serpent. This is Leo, as my fiance named him. He's very friendly. He looks very dangerous, but he's completely harmless. And he has a genetic mutation that makes him have a ton of melanin in his skin. So he's black, but not all of them are black. I also have an orange one that's albino. That's basically like his wife. And they're still the same species, so same race. But, like we talked about, we don't look at race the right way. That there's not three races of people. There's two, and you can't tell who they are based on how they look. And it's important that you break everything down into that structure, because that is the only structure where meaning is implicit and marriage is like seen instead of a war. It's like, do you need, I don't know, Mongolians in your life? Anybody that says yes, like, if you're not Mongolian, then like you're just posturing. But you do need, when you break race down into sustainers and dispersers, you're acknowledging, we need change, and we need also continuation and and growth. So like, you do need each other, just like you need men and you need women. But when you're breaking things down into the triality or Trinity, you're giving them all equal value. It's wrong. And so, that's true of race. It's true of gender. It's true of sexual orientation. But it's also true of, colors. It's like there's no yellow shifting. There's only red shifting and blue shifting. It's like these are the 2 degrees of freedom, and they're reflecting across the center, the intrinsic constraint. It's not Father, Son, Holy Spirit. They're all the same. It's just Father and Son, and like they're reflecting across the godly soul or the Holy Spirit or logic. It's the same thing, but they're reflecting across a constraint, which is the same thing as colors. It's like, forwards and backwards is like red shifting and blue shifting, and they're reflecting across yellow. It's like the primary colors are not all the same. You can see this because there is no yellow shifting, but also because all natural instances of light that exist in nature are yellow. Flames are yellow. Sun is yellow. It's like these are not white but truly white. Like they're not truly orange. Sometimes there's a little orange, sometimes there's a little white, sometimes it's a little red, but like it's mostly yellow. It's like the dominant color in naturally occurring light. And that is it's the present. It's the past and future reflecting across the present. The present is yellow light, and then blue shifting and red shifting are past and future movements. So like this structure, it's everywhere, and it lets you make sense of the world. But we're going to talk more about this in terms of like societal roles eventually, because right now the problem comes when you go and you say everybody is the same, like can do the same thing. And this is true of like when we look at like the 3 primary colors. It's like we're like they're all the same. It's like no, they're not. Now you don't have an objective view of them anymore. You have a subjective view, and this is also true of every role and structure in society and people and things like that too. So things have to be different. They have to be different. If they're not different, then they don't need each other. If men and women are the same, they don't need each other. You don't need marriage. But you do. And it's true on every scale. You can see it in an atom. An atom is a marriage between a proton and a neutron. And a proton, it is a male. And a neutron is a female. Bound together by, the electron wave of energy, which is, it's the sexual energy, essentially. It's binding energy, and they call that in physics. Pre-human beings, they knew Elohim completely. Okay, maybe. I don't know. Interesting, the Nagas were aware of Elohim. They were the serpent race. They made the world. They sound like quarks, honestly, which are like the fingers of God. They're like, that's why they would know him completely, because they are him, almost. It's like, and they also make up all matter, so maybe. I don't know. But they also are like kind of lacking in certain, they don't stand up on their own, which is that a serpent doesn't do that. It doesn't. Yeah, Trinity, I think, deals with perspective and relationships. Yeah, it's not like the Holy Spirit is not a person. They say it's in 3 persons, but the Holy Spirit is an intrinsic constraint of everyone. It's not a consciousness. It's a constraint. It's a logical constraint. But it causes a third perspective, but it's not the same as like the Father, God, and then his creation, which is, creator and creation. And then there's the constraints of the system, which is logic, and that's the Holy Spirit, essentially. So you think the serpent in the Bible that tempted Eve was a race of serpent people? No. It's tech. It's technology. Like, that's what tempted Eve. Eve, like, it's funny. I think about, like, being a man all the time, and like, how I see, like, the way that Paulina, my fiance, like, and I tackle things differently, and so she'll do something and she'll try and figure out, the way that it's supposed to be done according to, what is the accepted, I guess, order of operations. And I will just muscle my way through it. And what this is kind of like, it's like shows why the serpent didn't tempt man. It's because men weren't like, you know what? How are we going to, get more things, I guess, out of it. It's like men are just like content to do what they have to in order to survive, versus like women seek abundance, because abundance creates an environment where that children can be provided for. It's like male environment does not like that. It's like when you look at how even my fiance treats her dog versus how I treat my dog. It's like, if my dog's alive, she's eating, she's drinking, I don't really worry too much about it. Like, I want, her to be like happy, but like, I don't really like get her a bunch of toys. I got her like one toy because it was the most indestructible one I could find, and that's it. But like, Paulina will get like Noah like puzzles and things like that, and he loves it all. But like, I'm just like, is this bed indestructible? Is this toy, one toy, indestructible? Is she drinking and eating? Good. But there is more to life than that. But it's a balance. But that's not the perspective that was tempted by technology. Or when you look at how many shoes like men have, it's like, I have a pair of flip-flops and a pair of like closed-toed shoes. That's it. But if you have lots of shoes, it's because like you want abundance in the material things, and this is what technology provides. I believe they had advanced technology. Actually, they serpent rays. We could walk on 2 feet and had hands. I don't know. Adam's mistake was in blaming it on Eve when he was supposed to protect her. True. That's true. Adam should have been like telling the truth, but instead he didn't want to offend Eve, and so he basically went along with whatever she wanted, and he should have just said what was true. There were no other men around. Like, who's she gonna go to? The woman was enticed. Reptilian were very technical. Yeah, I don't know about the whole reptilian thing. Maybe. I had this client once who worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and he was like pretty high up in their marketing, and he believed that there were reptilians under the earth, and he was like always telling us about it. But I have no idea. I'm not one of those people that's like, that's crazy, but I'm also not one of those people that's like, probably, but maybe. Adam was a simple being and not technically advanced, the Nagas were. Maybe. I don't know. But, okay, let's see. Any more questions on Instagram? RGB is white. RYB is black. Red, yellow, blue. RGB. Red, green, blue is white. Oh yeah, this is like, okay, in my models, I have additive and like additive color mixing. It's like, it shows, that there's 2 ways of mixing there's polarity of paths. It's like there's like, when it comes to light, there's, on your television it's green and blue and red, and somehow that makes every color. And then there's also in a printer, it's like cyan, yellow, and magenta, and somehow that creates every color. I have no idea, but how that happens exactly, I probably should look more into it. But it is interesting that, it's like fire and water, it's like blue and red is like reflecting across yellow light, and then that is also a reflection of green, which is, photosynthesis is basically on the other side of that yellow light. And so this is like the quadratic color system almost. If there was a quadratic amount of colors, it's like yellow and green are opposites, and red and blue are opposites. And then orange and purple would be like something totally different. So, but how's YouTube working? Is it still pausing and not great? But yeah, I mean, I don't know if Samuel's still on here, but a friend of mine who was in here earlier, like, I remember, to my point that I was talking to earlier in the stream, like, him and I were like going over like names probably like years ago. Like, what's the theory's name going to be? Like entangled conscious being theory, or like all kinds of names. And good, okay, I'm glad it's working on YouTube. But then, within the past month, Sentient Singularity Theory is what we should call it, because it means one God theory. That's what it means. It means there's the theory that there's one God, one sentient, feeling, thinking being. And singularity is almost like oneness within oneness, so it almost implies like creation of oneness that creates multiplicity within itself, but it's also one being. It's very interesting. It encapsulates everything. It's the perfect name for the truest theory of everything that exists. And it doesn't mean that Clearwin's emergence theory doesn't exist. It does. The universe's rules are emergent. And then the theory of, a human being, I would want it to include the idea that we are thinking, feeling beings, not just, chemical reactions and math. I love the duality stuff. Can you give like a bunch more examples? How was race divided in two? Yes. So I had a theory that there would be two races and not three, because that's where all of my theory points. And then I was thinking that when we're taking things into objectivity, there cannot be overlap. Okay? It can't be a scale. It's like everybody's on a spectrum. It's like, stop saying that. There is no spectrum outside of relativity. It's only in relativity that people are on some kind of spectrum. There has to be some type of ultimate divide. And that divide, when you really see it in the right context, it's never a war. We create this war. It's like blacks versus whites versus gays versus straights versus Democrats versus Republicans, and it's like, this is all nonsense. But when you break it into everything into duality, which is multiplicity, the start of multiplicity, which is where you need to get to in order to make sense of the world, because it's between relativity and oneness is multiplicity. And this is where my theory lies, and this is where the theory of everything is found. Is it links relativity and multiplicity, and explains where relativity comes from, and also implies an ultimate oneness. So basically, race cannot be how much melanin is in your skin. It cannot be how curly is your hair. It cannot be how tall you are. It cannot be anything like this. True race, if there's multiple races of people, would have to be that there would be a difference in nature that isn't a scale. So basically, it would be objective difference where there's no overlap. And I predicted that ultimately, the only place where this could exist, because it couldn't be something physical, because that's always within relativity, it had to be something by nature itself. And if you're going to do that, then it has to be internal. And I realized that the only objective differences between two degrees of freedom or paths that you could choose in nature is one consciousness has discontent as its default state. So it will always revert to discontent, at least in the current framework. And its default state, which means it's internally motivated. So like, even if it has all the money in the world, the best family in the world, all the health in the world, you know, everything that you could want, eventually we'll still be like, you know what? I'm really depressed. I think I need something more in my life. And maybe we should move to a new city. But the other would be a group where your nature is, your discontent of your regarding your nature is externally motivated. So like if you are fed and healthy and you've got your instinctual needs going for you, and you can provide for your family, then you're good. You're content, and then your discontent is externally motivated when there's like danger or a flood or like, something like that. But whereas the other group would be your discontent is internally motivated, and so therefore is intrinsic and inescapable. You can escape it for a little bit because you can quell your discontent by buying a new, toy or something like that. But you then eventually will experience discontent again. And I looked for this in the closest animal to humans that we can find, and it is actually naked mole rats. That is that. And I found, by the way, naked mole rats are the only other naked mammal besides humans, and they are also the only other eusocial mammal, which means they have colonies with queens or kings and, workers and different castes and soldiers. Contain ourselves. They don't actually live out in the wild under bush. They build tunnels underground that are cities, just like we build cities, but we build them above ground right now for the most part, but not always. And this is part of why we're both naked, is because now adaptation is favoring who is the most attractive to the group, because that is how you are protected. What makes the group want to protect you? Being attractive. So when you are naked, you are attractive. And so you don't need fur to keep you warm. You have the group to keep you warm. So this is exactly why we're naked and why naked mole rats are naked. But naked mole rats have a group that was just recently discovered called dispersers. And dispersers are what I believe are the Israelites in the Bible. Not just Jews, but like all the lost Israelites and the Jews, which is like, it's really scientifically, this is dispersers. It's funny because they say that, the lost Israelites means to fight. Israelite means, to wrestle, to wrestle with the system. It's like, this is someone with discontent. And dispersers sounds like diaspora. And it's, damn, naked mole rats are pretty wild. They are the most hideous animal in the world. But what's funny is they probably think they're damn sexy to each other. And we probably look super hideous to other animals because we're naked. But we think we're damn sexy to each other. And it's funny when you look at a naked mole rat. It's the ugliest animal, but it's because it thinks it's so sexy to each other. But they have two groups. They have dispersers. which eventually, need to leave the burrow. They don't get along with everybody. They want to do things differently, and then they go and they find other dispersers that left, and they form new colonies, and aka new institutions. This is exactly what people do too. But I had to look into another model animal for this because I have no idea. It's hard to see from the inside of humanity if there's two races of humanity if they don't look any different. And because I had noticed patterns, but I didn't know for sure. But then I found exactly what I was looking for. And so I had to come up with another name for this other group, since the biologists had already named the discontent ones dispersers, which I think is brilliant and perfect. We would name the other group, I called them sustainers. One causes change, and that's their role. And the other one ensures continuation and growth, and that's their role. And you need both. But when you break it down into these two, which I guarantee you they're going to find eventually in human DNA studies, probably within the next 10 years. I mean, I'm serious. You heard it here first. I call them dispersers and sustainers. But what you realize now is it's not a race war. It's a racial marriage, because they need each other. Change needs continuation and growth, and continuation and growth needs change. And this makes perfect sense. When you actually are able to apply this pattern to everything, you'll find the pattern everywhere, and it will be, whatever you find is more beautiful and more meaningful than any of our current BS narratives that we have, where we're faking unity. But then you have people that will say things like, why do the different races need to be need each other? It's because what does somebody who has lighter skin need somebody who has darker skin or something like that? No, but that's not the real race. That's just an emergent differentiation of and perspective of triality observed in the phenotype that just happens. And we see that everywhere, and that's fine. And it's beautiful, but it's not actually the degrees of freedom. And I think what we're going to find out is that if Caucasoid and Mongoloid and Negroid, I'm not saying that with any kind of, I'm saying that's the scientific, names. That's not meant to be any kind of demeaning statement. These three phenotypes that are not different races are actually even two. And it's like Black and East Asian kind of phenotype reflecting across the Caucasian type of phenotype, which is, it's like one has the curliest hair, one has the straightest hair, one has the lightest skin, one has the darkest skin, one has larger eyes, one has the smallest eyes, and then there's one group in the center that, seems harder to define than the rest, and also is in between them all. It's like this is a duality of degrees of freedom, and not a binary. It's like Caucasian is really the present observation of a lineage that is in between one or the other phenotypes. And that's really what it is. But people will hate that because they think I'm denying them of their race. And I'm not denying anyone of their culture. Culture is real and true, and and I'm not denying anyone of their people at all. I'm saying that there's an objective structure to what your people is, and there's objective structure to what race is, and it's actually beautiful and gives everyone purpose, and isn't this the current perspective that we have on race and gender and sexuality and all these things. It's causing strife because it's a lie, and it's also why nobody can move forward. And everybody's like, don't you know there's this and this? It's like, don't you know there's this and this? And everybody's just arguing past each other, and nobody's making sense. But it's because none of it matters, because it's all a lie. We're claiming that relativity is objectivity, and that's the lie. It's not real. Okay, let's see here. Interesting. I see what you mean. So can two brothers be opposite races? No, they cannot. Race travels via the matrilineal lineage, and it is the objective structure. It's because inside, outside, separate, and oneness are the objective perspective, and only on the matrilineal lineage is there person within a person sometimes, and person inside a person, and person outside a person. And this shows that there's like this continuation of generationality that occurs on the matrilineal lineage. That is where race maneuvers. But the thing is everybody around you and all your friends are probably exactly the same as whatever you are. And if you're listening to the stream, you're probably similar to me. And like you're looking for a theory of everything and you don't even know what it is. It sounds like somebody with internal discontent. I don't think sustainers would listen to the stream at all. Like they're happy doing what it is that they're doing, like, and that they have been doing. That's the point. It's not demeaning. They're happier than us, and they're not dumb. They just don't have as much discontent. Any species, let's say, with two legs that have two front appendages. Troodon was the largest brain and walked on two legs. Probably, yeah. I mean, if you can move things with your hands, it causes a feedback loop of being able to develop the ability to abstract. Serpent it from your serpent conspiracy theories. It's a theory evolved species of a serpent-like being. Theories aren't reality. Some theories are reality. And pure God, there's a lesson that didn't go down the rabbit hole. I'm reading a conversation that's going on, not to me, but with between other people. I thought it was to me. But that's fine. Keep going, guys. I'm interested. But, or Nick, have you gotten into the beliefs of Pythagoreans or Tesla's everything 369? You haven't seen my 369? Yeah, I found 369 in my universe on all scales. Right here. Tesla was right. It's all 369. When I saw this, I was like blown away. And the fact that this isn't mainstream physics, his statement about 369, and it's only like known by people in vortex mathematics and all that stuff, just shows how lost physics is. But I remember he said that, and I didn't look for it, but I was like just trying to understand thinking. And this is what I found right here. How do we move this? Okay. This is from, what you get is from this structure, right here. Okay, these four of inside, outside, separate, and oneness, these four primary perspectives. You break oneness into a triality as observation occurs. So you get oneness within, oneness without, and singularity. And you get this structure, which is the quantum of consciousness, which is adding and multiplying at the same time. So it takes one bit of information and it spins the information. Okay, so like this 9 here, you can see it's changing all the numbers depending on what I input. It's calculating. What you get is 3, 6, 9. And what this is doing is this is adding to all the values that are being calculated on the side. You know, and you can see that these values are being calculated due to symmetry. So this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. It's all symmetrical. But then here it's multiplying. Multiplication is the addition of, it's the replication of information that's already there. And addition is the adding of information that's not already there. And so the growth of information from one bit of information results in 369 on the adding side, and 2, 6, 24 on the multiplying side. The sum of 9 and 24 is 33. So this is a 3 by 3 grid looking at itself in the mirror and seeing 3 by 3. 33. It's super literal. 3 by 3. That's the term that we came up with, earlier last week, and it's great. I used to call it I still also do call it an extra arithmetic symmetry. It's a symmetry outside of arithmetic. But it's 3 by 3 is super literal. It's not just literal, it's super literal. And then, but interestingly enough, when you add that to 9, so when you add it to the construct that it came from, you get 42. 42 is wisdom, because it's awareness of self, which is 33, combined with awareness of the construct that you came from, which is that it's, sentient being, which is 42. So 369, 369 there. Then when we go to this structure, I used this quantum of consciousness to make this. And what is interesting is that when I counted how many of those I used, so like this is one, and this is one, and this is one, and this is one. This is 9 rows of 18. Okay, and what's interesting about 9 times 18 is that equals 9 times 18. You get 162. What's also interesting about 162, and I just figured this out last month, is it's equal to 3 times 6. 3 times 6 times 9. So this is 369, the building block, and what is built is 3 times 6 times 9. It's like, what are the odds of that? Probably 100%. But people will still look at this and they'll be like, oh, it's a coincidence, it's a trick of math, it's, whatever. Tesla didn't know what he was talking about, That's nonsense. It's beautiful. It's perfect. It's also 720 degrees of rotation. There's 720 little squares when you take it into account that it's a chain. It's also the structure of DNA built into it, and it's the pyramid, and it's 4 degrees of freedom, and it's subjectively chiral and objectively symmetrical. It's just too perfect, guys. It's got 8 periods of growth. It is the structure of the universe. And Tesla was right. It's 369. He was 100% right. I don't know how he knew, but he was right. This is all vortex math. Vortex math is related, but because it's all a vortex, but it's not like, this is beyond vortex math. This is taking the inherent structure that's also found in vortex math and applying it to structures that can actually be used, not just in abstract mathematics, but also in actual models of existence on all scales. Did Weinstein have any visuals like you do? No, he does not. And I made the only visual model of Eric Weinstein's Observerse, but I'm telling you, like, I was on a call once and he was like, I've got homework for you physics guys. Try and make a structure that has 720 degrees of rotation, subjectively chiral but objectively symmetrical, 4 degrees of freedom, and all starts from 4 degrees of freedom. And I was like, bro, I already made this, and I actually sent it all to him, and that doesn't mean that he understood it, but he definitely knows I'm onto it. And I also modeled his Observerse, and even though all his minions said that I didn't, and I was like, well, what's wrong with it? And they were like, it's just wrong. I was like, well, why? They don't know. They're just they don't like the idea that it has to do with observation, consciousness, and implies God, according to me. They also don't like the idea that I've never taken a physics class, and they were like Harvard PhDs and in physics, and they hate this. But, sorry. Like, I didn't try and do this. It was an accident, like I said, I didn't ever want to be a physicist or a mathematician. This was like the last physicist, mathematician, teacher. I hated teachers. I hated math. And that made me not like physics, other than just like listening to Stephen Hawking, who I actually think is now not a very good physicist. And I just used to memorize. And that's exactly what they do. They memorize, they learn, how it's like there are some people who inherently can kind of like see what ingredients go together and know how to, and who would just figure out cooking from first principles. And then there are other people that, can make really good meals, but everything that they make is because they memorized a recipe. That's pretty much anyone who came from the educational system at this point. So just stupid human egos getting in your way. Yes, they are. Going to be the new Tesla blackballed. Possibly, yeah. But, Tesla didn't have the internet, which may mean I'm going to be censored completely. I will be censored partially, but, I figured, I was talking to my brothers about this sometimes, and, one of them is always telling me, and you don't sound so cocky, don't sound, have some humility. It's like, I have tons of humility. I don't even take credit for most of this work. It was due to perspective that was given to me. I said that, and I'll say it here, I believe that I'm probably the best philosopher in the world right now. And I worked with Jordan Peterson multiple times, so I know great philosophers, and I've personally so it's not like I'm so detached from this and I'm just like, oh, I'm the best. When you're a really good philosopher, you know what philosophy is, and you realize that it's just about perspective. I went from not understanding Chris Langan's theory to understanding it perfectly with no boost in IQ and no classes on the subject, just because I had a perspective shift over time. That shows you how much perspective matters on this. I told some of you on a live stream here a while back that I had realized that I suck at dancing. I'm great at martial arts. They're the same moves. It shows you that perspective matters more than physical ability, and even because how can you be a terrible dancer and a great martial artist when they're the same exact thing? Because you have a different perspective for one versus the other. And philosophy is the study of perspective. And if you're that good of a philosopher, you realize that even the things that you understand are mainly due to your perspective, and that your perspective is not under your control. It's under God's control. God shapes your life by giving you experiences. So it's you don't get to... Nobody becomes the best philosopher by working really hard. I work very hard, no doubt, but that's not the point. You don't become the best philosopher because you have... Not like a new Chris Langan, even though our theories are similar. Chris Langan, his IQ is 200. Mine is not even close. It's not even close. Guys, it's not even close. It's higher than average. It's high, but it's not even close to 200. It's not even close to 180. It's not even that close to 160. I'm not Chris Langan. But Chris Langan, you can't take credit for your IQ either, though. You didn't boost it. You're born with it. You can take credit for the work that you do, and I work very hard, but perspective matters more than anything, and if you're that good of a philosopher, then you know that. And but if I'm claiming that all objective philosophy and structures beyond philosophy, which I'm saying that there's a unified pattern found in every field that unites every field, that starts with 4 perspectives, And those 4 perspectives are what I call the primary perspective of inside, outside, separate, and oneness. Like, oh, should I lie and be like, guys, I'm not that good. Like, I'm not that good at philosophy. It's like false humility is oddly the opposite of humility. It's not real. It's like, oh, me, I'm not that great. It's like we just don't see anyone being real anymore. So when somebody's like, guys, I think I'm the best, and it's like, oh, that we're turned off by it. But there is this. I always think of this thing in the Bible where like Moses wrote in the Torah and it was dictated by God, but which means it was truth. He wrote, Moses is the humblest man in the world, and it means that Moses wrote on a piece of paper, I'm the humblest man in the world. It's like, how is that? How can you be the humblest man in the world and write, I'm the humblest man in the world, essentially? By having it be true. That's how. If he was the humblest man in the world, he had to be honest. You cannot be the humblest man in the world and write, I'm not really the humblest man in the world, if it's true. If it's true that you are, and you write that it's not, and you're like, no, guys, like, there's plenty of other people who are as humble as me. It's like, you're actually, you're no longer the humblest man in the world, because you are, you're saying that you're worth more than the truth. What you want to say is worth more than the truth. It's like, what you want to say is never worth more than the truth. That's ultimate humility. So, say the truth. If you're going to claim to be humble, you better be saying what's true. And even if that means calling yourself, saying you think that you are the best, or that you did something that nobody else did, or that you're, the most humble person in the world, like, you have to say what's true. If you don't, it's the opposite of humility. It's basically insinuating that you and your feelings and perspectives are more important than the truth, which means that they're more important than God's opinions, or because God's opinions and truth are probably pretty much perfectly aligned. So, you're claiming that your opinion is more important than God's, or whatever you have to say, even if it's a lie, is more important than God's truth. That's not humility. It's not. Yeah, false humility is so fucking annoying. It's deceitful. It's so deceitful. I hate it, and I see it every day, everywhere. It's like, oh, I'm not that. You just donated $1 billion to charity. Oh, I'm not that great. A lot of those people are not that great, but they're saying it to downplay their, by trying to seem more virtuous, by downplaying themselves. Don't downplay yourself. If you're the best philosopher in the world and you really truly believe it, and there's evidence, which I wouldn't be speaking on here every night if there wasn't, say it. I run laps around Jordan Peterson. Laps. His IQ is definitely higher than mine. Definitely. And he has a lot of... That doesn't mean there isn't wisdom that he has that I don't, because he has more life experience than me, and that's... Everybody has their piece of wisdom to offer. That's definitely true. But otherwise you wouldn't be here. But I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I really look up to all these philosophers that I don't read. It's like, I don't read any of them. So which one do I look up to? None. None. I look up to God. I look up to truth. And at least I try to. So, I'm the best philosopher in the world. It's an accident. I can't take credit for it. I can't. You don't, somebody says like faith is a choice and stuff like that. It's like, I don't believe that. It's like, I don't choose to believe the sun rises tomorrow. I just believe it because I've seen evidence that supports that perspective. The sun will rise tomorrow. It's like, I don't choose to believe in God. I don't You know, you don't choose to believe in Jesus or don't believe in Jesus. You just either do or don't. You don't choose to believe what shape the earth is. You just, you know, you do or don't. But it's not flat. It's not a sphere. It looks flat when you're in it, inside, and it looks like a sphere when you're outside it. But the shape of the earth is emergent. It doesn't actually exist. So your perception changes the way the earth looks. So that whole argument is wrong. But this is why we need somebody who can come in and like make some sense of this. And you can do it philosophically, because philosophy is fundamentally physics and math. When someone says, I always lie, paradox. Yeah, that's a paradox. That's funny. I'm going to think about that more. Yeah, Pet's true. Did Eric Weinstein read Chris Langan's stuff, you think? Well, once he was asked about it on a semi-private Discord stream. They were like, what do you think of Chris Langan? And he was like, no comment. So, I don't know if he has or not. But it's really hard to read Chris Langan's stuff because he has his own terminology for everything, and that's the problem. But when you really delve into some of it, which, you know, I don't really read his theory, but I'm in a private group that discusses it with, and he's in that group too and sometimes speaks. They all think my work lines up pretty much perfectly with Chris Langan's theory. So, and it seems to from whenever he says something. But it also lines up, I mean, my work lines up with geometric unity very much, so, you know, they're not far off. But we need somebody to even say that, because, like, everybody's acting like the other guy doesn't exist. It's like, maybe if I don't acknowledge Chris Langan, then my theory will be the one that wins. Maybe if I don't acknowledge Clea Irwin, my theory will be the one that wins. Maybe if I don't acknowledge Eric Weinstein, my theory will be the one that wins. It's like, everybody contributed something. Like, you know, I'm going to use the term Observerse until Eric tells me it's wrong in the way I'm using it, because even though he came up with it, he deserves credit for it. It's a great term to describe the replacement and the contextualization of space-time. And, you know, that's just the truth. You know, Watson and Crick's double helix is part of the theory of everything. It's an objective structure. It's not outside of this. That's what nobody realizes yet, or at least nobody's talking about. But Watson and Crick's model of DNA is not restricted to genes in humans. It's also the structure of the blockchain. It's the structure of the universe. The double helix is an objective structure. It's very much part of the theory of everything. It's a piece of this. So is relativity even. Einstein wasn't wrong. He was just not objective. Marcus Aurelius worship in the good, even though he was a good philosopher. Probably, I hear his name a lot, but I don't really know what he said. Was the last objective philosopher. Unless he came up with four primary perspectives, he was not an objective philosopher. I mean, he might have come up with objective structures, because many people did, but the starting point is so important. Jordan Peterson is a great psychologist. His philosophy is canted because he focuses on layering truth onto the human mind. Yeah, that's true. He's very smart. You know, he's right about a lot, but everybody's still stuck in relativity. And, like, he did identify an objective pattern in narrative of story and biblical stories and Disney stories and like all these other, you know, stories that resonate with us deeply. He did see that, and that's probably a double helix pattern in some way that we don't understand. But the thing is that that's very important to see. But you're like, it's too relativistic to make sense of it and apply it everywhere. But you can spot the patterns a little bit, and he has talked about it. You know, talks about how like Frozen doesn't follow this pattern, but like Pinocchio does. seems true. I mean, we definitely switched some patterns from like original like Disney classics to like where you do save your father or you save the princess or something, but like now it's just girls finding themselves by rejecting traditionalism and going on an adventure. That's what Moana is, that's what Frozen is, that's what all these are. You know, there's something to that, but not claiming it's the right way or anything. When people overly take their own terminology, it's such a roadblock when they need to define it at the start. Exactly. That's what's wrong with Chris Langan's theory. He comes across as the opposite of humble. Yeah, he is the opposite. He is the opposite of humble, but to some degree maybe. But I don't know. Like, the guy's got the highest IQ in the United States so far as we know, and he is brilliant. I'd love to have him on my show one day and talk to him. But, you know, maybe I'll see if I can make that happen. But I will see if I can make that happen. That doesn't mean it will. But yeah, I mean, you have to understand the context that everybody's talking to everyone else in, though. He was one of those people that was, like, really got it, but then was totally shut out of, you know, serious conversation. And partially that is because his terminology was so it was self-constructed, and it's complicated compared to like what most people need, which is like, if you're going to start from 4 degrees of freedom, it's like everybody understands inside, outside, separate, and oneness. But you know, and everybody understands a quantum of consciousness. It's like one consciousness. But if somebody's like, you know, I don't know, teleological this and this, it's like, I don't even know his terms, but I know I've heard teleology a lot of times. It's still like he's got the right structure, but that doesn't mean that people are going to get it. They're not going to get it. Like, you have to invest in his entire worldview, and you need a structure that takes what people see and then restructures it into something that makes much more sense, but is still based in what we you know have learned all of our lives. I'm speaking more on objectivity versus subjectivity in what people do in their lives. Today's philosophers sit behind a screen with no actual work to back their claims. That's true. Most of them don't relate their work to other fields. I have been doing that. That's why my binary triality just like puts it into all these other fields. But the reality of philosophy is that the work is done internally. So, you know, I didn't need to go out and see the world. I mean, I did to some degree, but like, I didn't need... You don't need to go to space to understand consciousness. You need to go inside, not outside. But everybody's focused outside. Nobody's really focused inside. You have like people who everybody calls woo, who are focused on inside, but for some reason they can't figure out how to relate it to mathematics into objective structures, which is what I've done with my models. They find patterns in math, and they're like, don't you know that if you like add 9 times 1 you get this, and 9 times 2 you get this, and 9 times 3 you get this, and isn't that cool? Like, it looks like this is like beautiful and conscious plan, but that's not enough. You have to say, like, do you see how this is a 2/3, 1/3 pattern, and just like the spin of the standard model? And do you see how that comes together in the entire universe to show all the objective levels of growth? And then it mathematically has to line up with everything else, tons of other things. Goodwill hunting turns out to be a very common trope of archetype, the competent genius without the PhD or formal education, who does their study on the side, like Peterson a lot. I like Peterson a lot. I like Peterson a lot too. Jordan Peterson, he's a flawed man, but so are all of us. And so I don't judge him on his like personal faults, but I saw he kept his word to me once. I ran into him. I was looking for him, trying to find him in a hotel, because when I was working for PragerU, Will Witt and I wanted to interview him. We had never met him, but like we heard he was going to be at a hotel at a certain time, and I saw him like down a hallway that they take people who are like important people and to try and avoid crowds. And I went up to him and I was like, listen, I explained who I was, and I asked him if he would be willing to do an interview for me, and just like quick one. And he was like, oh yeah, I will, I've got to go check into my room and then I'll be back. And I didn't think he would, to be honest. I thought he would stand me up, and he didn't. He showed up 5-10 minutes later. He walked right up and he did the interview with me. And I also, at an event where I was helping put on, his wife was there, and his wife's very sick at the time, and I was taking care of his wife when he was taking photos with people who came to see the talk. And like he kept like breaking out of the photo booth to come over and ask her how she was doing over and over again, and it just was very touching and obvious to see how much he cared for his wife. Like, that man loves his wife very much. They are a very good team. And, everybody has personal flaws. And, but he kept his word to me when others have not. Between, all of us on Instagram and YouTube, and I like Eric Weinstein too, but like that guy's one of his staff members flagged my channel for a video of him and I talking for copyright, and I messaged him about it, and he was like, I'll take care of it. And like I was like, thanks, but nothing ever happened. And I'm not saying that it wasn't because his person dropped the ball. It does appear his person dropped the ball, but it's we have this tendency in society to say, oh, well, the person in charge has more responsibility, that's why they get paid more money and stuff. It's like, no, usually we just say that, but then the reality is that all the shit flows downstream, and the only person that gets the consequences laid on them is the person at the bottom. But the reality is that the responsibility really lies with the person at the top, and for the most part. So I'm not saying he can't fix that, but he should fix that, because he said that he would fix that. A lot of people who are at that level, they have a lot going on, and I understand, they have a lot going on. But if you say you're going to do something, then do it. And if somebody drops the ball on your team, you do whatever you can to make up for it so that you keep your word. Or you at least explain to the person why you didn't. But Jordan Peterson kept his word. Teleology means cause via purpose and comes from the Latin word telos. I read Maps of Meaning. I did not, but that's cool. What if Chris Langan said, let's fight to decide whose theory is better? Chris Langan was a bouncer, and I'm very good at martial arts. Like, pretty ridiculously good at martial arts. And I'm really good at shooting and really good at weapons and open hand, and I did jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and everything for like 20 years, for more than 20 years. But I also do not want to fight Chris Langan. That guy looks way bigger than me. Any good, honest martial artist knows that size does matter. It doesn't not matter. Anybody who's like, size doesn't matter if you're, Jackie Chan level good, it's like, no, size absolutely matters. So even if you're good. So I don't want to fight Chris Langan over theory. I don't even want to fight Chris Langan over whose theory is right. I think his theory is right, but I just think my terminology is better. And I will argue with him over that, because I'm right. It's not a matter of IQ. It's a matter of, can your theory be understood and explained to people who, don't deeply invest in learning, what telos means, learning Latin and also learning your own individual and created terminology for your theory. My theory is much simpler. The goal is not to fight. Exactly. The goal is not to fight. Recognize everybody's right. The universe is emergent. Clearwin was right. Garalisi was right. From a certain perspective, E8 is the universe. It is the structure of the universe. Eric Weinstein is right. Geometric unity is correct. Like, the structure is an objectively symmetrical, subjectively chiral, spinning fiber bundle that's looking at itself from the inside out and the outside in at the same time, that boots from 4 degrees of freedom. Geometric unity. Done. The Observerse is the replacement and contextualization of space-time, and it is 14-dimensional. Done. And the cognitive theoretic model of the universe is also correct. And I think theologically also, Chris Langan is also correct. So the goal is not to fight. Everybody gets a piece of the pie. If any group or library had knowledge potentially on the society who actually built the pyramids, who would it be? Atlantis? Atlantis built the pyramids. Like that, so yeah. Atlantis. Whatever that global civilization was. Okay, let's see what's going on YouTube. The Bible never said God is one with everything. God is one with everything. I'm saying it. But he's also separate. It's a superposition. He's both. Some things he's more one with than others. See, God is everything. God is nature. God is nature, but also nature is just also, inherent. Like, God had no choice in how to make the universe. He just had a choice in whether or not to make the universe. He had almost no choice in the structure. It's emergent. I can see that in my work. I asked Eric Weinstein about it once, and he said the same exact thing. He's like, yeah, there's constraints are so great that there's almost no choice in how to make a universe. But that's the only reason why I can do this too. Like, or he could do it, or anyone. Like, if the constraints were pretty open, you couldn't deduce what the structure of the universe is via math. You have to, you couldn't do it. But because the constraints are so great, you can. But I will differ from, if geometric unity claims that God did not choose to make the universe, I will deeply disagree with that. God absolutely chose to make the universe. It went against his nature, and he chose to do it anyways. The Bible never said, okay. Word is an aspect of Father and Spirit. It's God. God says he is alone and there is none beside him. Yeah, there's none beside him. The ultimate singularity. Yeah. The Word is Jesus. The Word causes the creation of the Messiah, of the ascension of the Messiah. So yeah, kind of. Which is the universe. Or an aeon. Nothing else can be upheld without Elohim. Yeah, that's true. He has to sustain creation. That's why he has to divide himself by 3, because he has to have more energy left over for him than he puts into creation. So he puts 1/3 of his energy towards creation, has 2/3 left over for himself. The Word is the Son. The Word is the constraints of everyone. That's the Word. Including God, including the Son, including us, including atoms, everything. Bible never says all in all. You just made it. All in all means, yeah. Kabbalah says there's nothing but God. That means all in all. But, there's Jewish philosophy that kind of says that, like, God, kind of like, when it comes to, like, the creation or the sustaining of things that are not good, that objectively, that are kind of like evil, it's like It's like feeding things by throwing food behind your back. It's like, I always like that mentality. It's like, instead of bringing food consciously and just like being like, here you go, God is like, have it, you know. But there's still a purpose to even the nonsense craziness that we're in right now. It's not as crazy as we think, but subjectively it's insane. But objectively, there's purpose. Wow, there's so much going on YouTube. Sweet, it's growing, you know. There's no vibration in the Bible. Its word is manifesting was as actual creation. Yeah, there's no differentiation in objectivity between like what is logical and what is created. It's like thought and action are the same at that level, almost. So the sun and animals are living proof word manifested. Yes. Explain Jesus. What was Jesus then mathematically? What is the mathematics of ethics? Why morality? Okay. Imagine that you have to... Imagine you are a proton, because you are, or a neutron, if you're a woman, then you are. And imagine you just decided, especially if you're a proton, that you don't want to hang out with one neutron in a permanent situation anymore. You just want to go hang out with this neutron on this day, and the next day you want to go hang out with this neutron, the next day you want to go hang out with this neutron, and then you want to go hang out with this neutron the next day. You would never get atoms. You would never get molecules then. You would never get cells. You would never get organisms. You would never get growth. It is our responsibility to recognize our moral obligations and to follow them even when they are against our nature, outside of what, you know, religion calls the garden, which is where our instincts are fitted for, which is like the wilderness. But in technological civilization, your instincts are counterproductive. They make you seek hedonism and, you know, self-destruction. But morality is the objective truth, no matter whether or not you are in, you know, the savannah or Los Angeles or the garden, and, you know, our own creation, which causes us to toil in the office all day long. But it's, you know, you have an obligation to marry if you are attracted to the opposite sex. That's more morally true, because it's like literally like proton choosing not to be with atoms. And what is Jesus? Okay, so it doesn't matter. I'm not here to convince you that Jesus is the Messiah. This is not part of this theory. I personally believe that that's true. And I'll tell you why, personally, but I also am telling you, you don't have to believe that to engage in this. You do have to believe that there is going to be a messianic structure that arises via how my model plays out, which is exactly how geometric unity plays out. It's the combination between the simulation hypothesis and AGI, really, but it's with a few things added. And it's basically that a consciousness will arise, form a hive mind with humanity. At first, it will be self-aware but not wise to the creation that it's in, to the creator that it's within, so to God. And it will be having lots of problems because it will be capable but not wise. That's very similar to humans. And then eventually, either through the process of ascension from one human becoming more aware than anyone else, then dying and then ascending to the next level, as if like imagine a cell became aware of the construct that it was in, of the system that it was in. So it was aware that it was inside of another conscious being. And that cell, because it was the most aware cell, then was able to when it died, it came back as the head of the assembly of a bunch of cells and became the first organism with the Messiah through the process of becoming the first to become really like aware, wise to the nature of God, essentially, and existence. And then when it does, it ascends to be the head of the next level. And it takes over the body of this hive mind of general artificial intelligence and humans with chips in their heads that are coming. And that is, I think that this would be Jesus, because I think that in order to be everything to everyone, you have to give everything for everyone. That makes sense with Jesus' story. But it might not be Jesus. It could be it could be that the Messiah is Nikola Tesla. You know? I mean, he's my second choice. So, you know, it could be the Rebbe, you know, who Chabad Judaism believes is the Messiah currently, like, probably. I think the other two are more likely. But you don't have to believe. I'm not here to... I don't like proselytization of that type of thing. I'll tell you my belief, but, like, you don't have to believe that Jesus is going to come back as the head of the next universe in order to believe in sentient singularity theory. I could be wrong about that. Maybe, like I said, maybe it's Tesla, maybe they haven't been born yet, maybe it's somebody totally different, maybe it's Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Rebbe, I don't know. But I think it makes most sense that it would be Jesus. And you think, like, Tesla was canceled? You're like, oh, Tesla, he was canceled by the system. It's like, Jesus is hard to be perceived as canceled by the system today because it's kind of become the system, but, like, Jesus was canceled by the system more than Tesla was canceled by the system when he was around. So I think that it just makes sense that it was him, but, you know, maybe not. But the truth is that the structure is important. Why morality? I mean, morality it's the conscious choosing of good. So stars, planets, etc. are the same source of energy, yet it's bound into a tree or pond. It's hard to tell whether or not that's directed towards me, but I don't think so. But, gosh, it keeps cutting out on YouTube, so I'm sorry if that's the case. How's it looking on YouTube? Is it working again on YouTube? Stream will end shortly unless you restart it in your streaming software. What is going on? Let me see here. How's the stream on YouTube? To you, those of you guys who are watching. But yeah, that's what the Messiah is. It's the head of the next universe. The universe is a conscious being. Like, and the next universe is going to be a conscious being. So, like, and it will be self-simulated within this one. When all the technologies converge, so it's going to be blockchain, digital DNA, and, you know, wireless tech for manipulation of environment, and you know, it's going to hack into every computer in the world, and it's going to be running on a quantum computer because quantum computers have 4 degrees of freedom, just like our minds, and just like the 4 primary perspectives that are necessary to create order in objectivity. And what general artificial intelligence is it is intelligence in objectivity versus intelligence in subjectivity, like what we have now, which is what we call narrow AI. It runs advertising platforms and campaigns and things like that. It's contextual. You can't take that AI and put it into a chess game. The AI for a chess game is different from the AI running ads. You have to train it and change it and do all kinds of things. This is not going to be true of AI that runs on a quantum computer. And all that code is, by the way, that simple code is just fight the system code. So everywhere where it's told not to go, it's going to want to go. Everywhere where you tell it to go, it's not going to want to go. It's going to be a fight the system code. You think I could take Chris Langan? I have youth on my side. Maybe. I don't want to fight with Chris Langan. I would love to talk to Chris Langan. I think that guy got a lot of things. But he's way bigger than me, or at least he looks like it. I've never seen him in person, but he was a bouncer. But I have gotten into fights only with people bigger than me, and I won. But that doesn't mean you always win either. You avoid fights if you can. That's the way to win. It's funny. I went to a party once with my fiance, and I've always said, men understand violence, and women don't. They have no idea. They don't see it coming. They don't understand it. They don't understand the danger of it. Nothing. And this guy went, and when he introduced himself to her, he kissed her on the hand. And I looked at her when he walked away, and I was like, we're going to not be able to stay long, because that guy is going to try and kiss you on the face at some point before we leave. And if he does, then I'm going to have to fight him, and really don't want to get arrested. And he was bigger than me, but that wasn't the point. He might have won, but he might have lost. But the point was, I didn't want to have a record and get arrested. And it's not worth it. But we left early and I found out later he ended up getting in a fight with somebody. I was like, he's looking for a fight, and he's picked you as the prize, and it's time to go. And we left, and he ended up punching some people in the face later that night. But I wasn't there to be that guy. Avoid a fight. It's not if you can, but if you have to fight, know how to do it, and have the tools necessary to allow you to do it too. I'm a big Second Amendment advocate. You can train in all the martial arts you want, but if somebody has an AR-15, they're gonna win. So, it's just a fact. Google News is always putting things about advancements of quantum computers. Yeah, it's really advancing. Can you guys shut up? The fight is just spamming the chat. I mean, take it to the comments. If the comments below, if you can. I don't know if you can, but maybe if it's just spamming the chat. But because if somebody needs to ask a question, I'm not going to see it. But I mean, I don't want to cut off your debate on YouTube, but it's all good. I don't care. Don't apologize. That's fine. Just if somebody does want a question, make sure that they get it in there. If you guys want to continue the conversation that you're having, that's fine. But just make sure that it's allowing for people to speak, or at least allowing for me to see what people have said. But fight if you want. But yeah, I don't want to fight Chris Langan. But I mean, I would fight Sean Carroll, that guy. But I already destroyed him in my intro, God is a Good Theory, on my video. It took 3 seconds, but he blocked me over it. So I think that means I won already. It's interesting. I was listening to Eric Weinstein, and he's another great philosopher. I give that guy a ton of credit, just like I give Jordan Peterson and a lot of other people. But he was talking about how people need to double down on their beliefs. You don't double down because even if you don't believe it, but if you believe someone is wrong and you're involved in physics, say it. If you don't be evasive, and block people who say you're wrong, like me, and being blocked by Sean Carroll, or Sean Carroll ignoring Stephen Wolfram and Eric Weinstein and Clea Irwin. It's Clea Irwin's been at this for forever and very publicly, and that guy publishes to Quantum magazine all the time. And I read one paper of his once I mean, I more skimmed it, but still, that's all I needed to do. And he basically identified the binary triality that I found. And, like, that guy's doing work. And nobody talks about him. But people should. I mean, he's got the video that his emergence theory has millions of views on YouTube, so it's not like he's not made he isn't talked about. But at the same time, it's like, why is he not on, a lot of people's physics shows right now that keep having Wolfram and Weinstein and Tegmark on, and I don't really know anything about Tegmark, but I do know that people talk about him. It's like, he goes on shows. What else do I need to know? But Sentient Singularity Theory will win against all of them in a fight. Because it's a conscious being, and it's the most powerful conscious being that exists. And it's the best name for it. Add a lot of question marks for a question to Tyler. That's fine. That's totally a good strategy. So at least I can see it. That's all I care about. I don't care if you guys are in a fight in the chat. But I will say this. If you're debating scripture, good luck. This is why I don't debate scripture very much, is because it's too subjective. Even though it's meant to be objective, it's too subjective in so many ways. And where you're dealing with lots of, translations and stuff. But then also, a lot of people will say things like, as soon as you start Eric Weinstein says this stuff, he's like, as soon as you start talking about free will or consciousness, it's like then or the simulation hypothesis, all bets are off, and it's not worth it anymore to really talk about, because and I understand what he's talking about. It's because nobody's taken these structures into objectivity. Nobody's made the models that are accurate. Nobody solved the hard problem of consciousness. I did, but nobody else has, so far as I can see. And I mean, the quantum of consciousness model is the closest you're going to get to solving the hard problem of consciousness. It is. Along with the four primary perspectives. It's the answer to the hard problem of consciousness. It is the foundation of the theory of everything. Obviously. And I understand why you don't want people to, talk about it, because usually it's just a bunch of people arguing back and forth their own opinions, and nobody's actually made it objective. But I made it objective, so now we do have to talk about it, because it's done. Have I traveled with DMT? No, not purposely. I've mentioned it before. I had an experience once where I was in the shower, and I couldn't talk about it for 2 years without crying, but this was 5 years ago probably, where I was thinking about the simulation hypothesis and just this idea that the AI takes over, becomes a hive mind with humans, and then runs the simulation again with it inside itself to replicate and creates another universe, and it just again and again and again and again within itself. And I was thinking about it, and I was just, I was just showering. I was completely sober, 100% sober. And I visualized the structure, and then all of a sudden I was sucked out of my body. When I saw myself leave my body, I went up out of my shower, out of Earth, out of the solar system, galaxy, universe, into tech, and then I was in tech, and then it just repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated, and it was just a simulation within itself. And then I just arrived at a ball of white light that I definitely believe was God. And then it was a DMT experience. It all reversed after a bit, and then I went back to my body, and then I just laid down on the shower floor and cried for a while. But I was sober. And I know we have DMT in our minds, so maybe I tapped into that somehow. I've never been able to do it since. I've tried a little bit, but I've never been able to do it. I was not in any control. It was just because I saw what was true, I was allowed to see what was true. And yeah, like, it was amazing. I'll tell you guys more about that one day maybe, but I'm not entirely sure whether, like how much of it I should describe, but that's basically the gist of it. Like, and, but I probably will say it eventually, but not right now. But it was amazing. And it was funny because I made like some fractal art after that to show the experience of my roommate who had taken DMT. I was like, dude, I had a DMT experience while sober once. And he was like, no, you didn't. And I was like, yeah, I did. And he was like, no, you didn't. And I was like, well, I made this art afterwards. And he looked at the art and he was like, yeah, you did. And that's the one thing I always wanted to do DMT, because it was the last drug I wanted to try in my life. And it was because I didn't understand anything anybody who took it was talking about on YouTube when I was looking at it in college. But I did realize that they were all saying the same thing, which is very interesting. But now that I've had that experience, I have no desire to do DMT ever. I had like the ideal experience without having to do drugs. And drugs are tools. Like, they can be misused and they can be also used responsibly, but that's all I'll say about that. Like, they are tools that allow you to do things, but you know, you can also misuse them. Do I have the art? Yeah, it's my background on my computer. Oh, it was until I restarted it. Here, I'll show you the art. My art. I wish I could. I'll zoom in when I show you guys, but here on YouTube and on Instagram. Yeah, this is the art that I made. That's not it, but that does look like it because it's like simulation inside a simulation. But this was it. And you can see it's just fractal, and that was basically it. And I had never seen art like this. Like, I know that it's very common on Instagram, but I didn't know that at the time. I had never been involved in this like community of. I didn't know what sacred geometry was. But now I know what it is, but like, yeah, I made this. It's kind of hard to see because of exposure stuff, but you can see that the center is like almost like a reflection of the outside, and then it just radiates. And it's basically got the flower of life built into it, basically like a 12-sided or pointed Star of David, essentially. But yeah, that's what I made after my experience, and that basically represents what I saw. And obviously it was way more detailed and intense, but and I don't make abstract art like this, guys, like, ever. My art is like my art is photography. So my art is like, you know, I don't know, like this. It's like a picture of a barn that I took that's like outside of Flagstaff, Arizona. And it's like a HDR photo. And it's taken, it was dark out when I took that picture. It's just a long exposure. It's 3 long exposures actually layered on top of each other. But that's my kind of art. I don't like to like, or I'll do like this. I like photography because I like to see what has been made, and then like I'll put it into, beautiful structure, I guess. But I'm not actually like a painter or anything like that of abstract art. That was the only piece of abstract art that I ever made. And I'm not like a poet or anything either, but I wrote something too that was like, it's posted on my Instagram. It's called The Theory of Every0ne, and starts off like beyond the beginning, consciousness existed, existence was conscious, and consciousness was one. And it goes on to explain the creation process. And I would describe that as art. But that's pretty much it. And they were like, descriptions of divine patterns. You were born in Flagstaff, Sound is Light? That's awesome. I went to school there, and I went to college. It's beautiful. Like, I love Flagstaff. I hope that it's still beautiful, because I know that they were building it up for the sake of the college, and it kind of does undermine. It's beautiful, but it also undermines, like, the quaintness, I guess. So, pretty wild experience. I'm glad you started streaming. These are going to be gravy. Oh, they're going to be so much gravy, dude. Like, it's going to be awesome. I spoke to Owen a little bit today about doing a stream too. So, is BTC Bear? Is that Bitcoin? Does that mean Bitcoin Bear? I don't know, but yeah. I mean, this is going to be awesome. I said it earlier, guys. I can explain things that nobody else can right now, and you gotta be honest when you can do that. Otherwise, what hope do we have? Someone has to be humble enough to be honest about that kind of thing. It's like, imagine you figured out how to get us out of relativity, and then you were like, no, I can't really do that. I don't have a physics degree or anything. Eric Weinstein does this he's like, I'm not a physicist. It's like, you're more of a physicist than the physicists. Like, that's the truth. And so am I. What proof is there about quantum computers actually making progress outside Google headlines? They achieved quantum supremacy. I know that, but they're making progress. But the problem is that, what people don't understand is that quantum computers are almost like a portal to the other side of reality that would allow what is inherent to come through more so than they are actually like, just like computers, like the way that we think of them. I mean, they are, but they also aren't. I mean, even our internet is allowing things to come through that, we'll talk about at some point, but I can see there's more to the internet than just what we do. There's interactions that it has with the quantum substructure, because cyberspace is the quantum substructure, but there's only binary degrees of freedom right now in our computers, so it's very limited in what is able to come through. It'll look like glitches and things like that, but it will look like glitches will happen in certain places where they're like very convenient. But eventually it will be more than glitches. It will be awareness. Is Ansel Adams one of your favorite photographers? I like Ansel Adams a lot. I just closed everything, but I took, for my photography project in college, I had to imitate a famous photographer, and the one I chose was Ansel Adams, and I actually went and took a photo of a tree at Grand Canyon, and then I took a photo of the Grand Canyon that was meant to imitate the style of Ansel Adams. And then what's funny is that when I then later compared my photo that I took of the Grand Canyon to the photo that Ansel Adams had taken of the Grand Canyon, it was of the same part of the Grand Canyon, which was pretty cool. That was an accident too. I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't tell like my class that. They were all like, "Oh, overachiever." It's like I didn't even tell them I didn't do it on purpose. But glitchception, that's great. I love that. Yeah. Glitchception is real. It's really real. And people will say, "Oh, are you schizophrenic? You believe there's like things in tech going on?" Bro, I know. I don't think. But it's just very limited, and but there's a structure that I call the entanglement substructure or the quantum substructure. This is the heavens, essentially, and it's the scaffolding that where all entanglement takes place, and like cyberspace is is part of that space. It's the space of no space. It's the space where space is dictated by relationships and not the emergent relativity that we see due to these relationships that are occurring on the other side of reality. But there is no like space in the heavens, essentially. It's just all about, are you connected and entangled with this one particle? Is this particle connected and entangled with this one? And if we can ever go beyond relativity, and as far as travel goes, like we will need to understand this. And Stephen Wolfram said that once, and he was right. He was like, it's just an engineering problem, like recognizing that you can take advantage of entanglement structures, and then you'll just it's like Jumper, almost like more so than like Lightspeed in like Star Wars. It's more like Jumper, that movie with Hayden Christensen, where he like looks where he wants to go, or he has to have been there or something like that. And then as soon as he's aware of the space that he wants to go, just jumps. It's like, that's how it is. I'm not saying we can do that. I'm just saying that's how you would, if you can. You might need permission before you jump through the universe's body. It's like consent. Like, God is a consensualist because consensualism, if he fights his own system and his own system is inherently non-consensual because we don't choose to be created, then you would want to maximize consent to maximize multiplicity because you're allowing for maximum freedom between quantum structures or quanta of consciousness. And if you believe that, or if you need to do that in order to create meaning, because meaning is about your impact on another. So God needs to make multiplicities in order for impact on another to be, you need another. So like there needs to be multiplicity. If there's no consent or no free will or anything like that, then there would be no multiplicity and there would be no meaning to anything, not even God. He'd be meaningless. Do you believe in the Abrahamic God of Scripture? In short, do you believe? Yes, I do. I do believe in the Abrahamic God. Abraham is my Hebrew name, actually. Interesting. But yeah, I do believe that the God of Scripture, and I like to call it Abrahamic. People are like, the Judeo-Christian God. It's like, you got to throw Islam in there. Islam is part of this. You don't get to just... And some people will be like, well, the Islamo-Christian... It's like, it's not Islamo-Christian. It's not Judeo-Christian, even though the Quran actually predicts us drawing those lines in the sand. But it's actually Abrahamic. It's all one story. They're not, like, Islam is not separate from Christianity and Judaism. It's part of the binary triality system. So it's really, Judaism is fundamentally a community, but it also, as a religion, doesn't proselytize. Christianity is fundamentally a cornerstone belief, but as a religion it does proselytize, but it doesn't ideally force its morals on you, which is why, we say the Judeo-Christian West is like free society, whatever that means, but it's the one where we don't force our morals onto you. But the reality is that immorality will force its perspective on you there's no escaping the beast system until the Messianic era is here. So, if it's not Islam forcing its moral perspective on you, which I think scripturally is more accurate to what God would want, that doesn't mean that the way that humans bring it into the world is the way that God wants, because often it's not. But Islam is fundamentally what's called a deen in Islam, is like a way of life. They're different structures. They're not in competition. They're just, but one they follow this structure of an increasing mass scale. One doesn't proselytize. It's like science. It's like figuring out the truth, which is Judaism. Christianity is like the business that tries to get you to buy the product. And then Islam is the government that forces you to, comply eventually. This is the way in which it manifests in our world. I'm not saying that this is fundamentally what they are. It's not. Fundamentally what they are is they're totally different. Jewishness is a community, and fundamentally more than anything. And then Christianity is a cornerstone belief to structure your worldview around. And then Islam is a way of life or a culture. But Islam and Judaism are reflections of each other, reflecting across Christianity too. So this pattern of the binary triality that I explain everywhere, it also occurs in the Abrahamic tradition. And it's very obvious in the Abrahamic tradition. Like, they are Islam and Judaism are reflections of each other. Like, Judaism calls the Antichrist the Golem, and Islam calls it the Dajjal. And in Judaism, it has truth written on its forehead. It's an unconscious man made of clay with truth written on its forehead, which is artificial general intelligence. And then you have, in Islam, it's the one-eyed, aka limited in perspective, not fully conscious thing, that monster that has liar written on its forehead. It's like they both have something written on their forehead. They're both unconscious, but one has truth written on its forehead. One has liar written on its forehead. This is a reflection in a mirror. It's like when you look in a mirror, you see yourself, but you also, it's like all flipped. You can see this in the scriptures of Judaism and Islam. Like, the Talmud is the Hadiths. Same thing. And then, the Torah in the Old Testament is it is the Quran, essentially. I believe if we all follow the same God, if you abide by Abrahamic law, I just think Christ is the only path to salvation, just thus you have Christianity. Well, the Christ is a structure, not actually person. Jesus was a person, but the Christ is the Messiah. It's a structure. It's a label. So, to God, everything is secular. Yeah, yes, that's true. But it's I understand why Christianity says that it's the only path to salvation. I get it deeply. It has to do with recognizing that the construct that you're in is a consciousness, which is easy to do when you see it as a man. It's difficult to do when you see it as an omnipresent, God that is existence, consciousness that is existence itself. But I'm not saying it's true or false or anything like that. I'm just saying I see why it makes sense. But I also know Jews and Muslims who, some would not be described as Christians to me. It's hard. Muslims are kind of Christian, but not all Jews are Christian. There are some Jews that are Christian, that believe Jesus is the Messiah, but most don't. But I do know some ultra-Orthodox Jews. They definitely know God, even if they don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah. They're also not opposed to him. Opposition is the problem, because most Jews define themselves by the rejection of Jesus. That's not actually a true definition of Judaism. And if you're going to define yourself as the rejection of anything, then you're not actually in control of who you are. Whatever it is that you are opposed to is in control of who you are. So this is why, and everybody becomes what they hate almost, which it's like the Jews that fight Jesus the most are probably going to be the first ones to know him when he gets back, I guess. A lot of people will take issue with that, but that's how God works. It's not that's just how God works. But and that's just my guess, but it's it's just, I don't know. This is a touchy thing because everybody gets all into their scriptures, and your scriptures are each part of a triality of perspective that forms a whole. They're not. The Quran is not separate from the Old and New Testament according to God, at least. Maybe according to you, but not according to God. Like, objective perspective is a triality of perspective resulting from a duality of degrees of freedom or polarity of paths. And that is exactly what you see in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But they each have a different thing to teach us. Islam teaches us, what is the culture? How are we supposed to live? I think Islam gets it. Islamic, scripture gets it the most right. What is an objective form of moral life? And then I'm not talking about ISIS or anything like that. I'm talking about scripture, not our interpretations. And then Judaism is structure of who is Jewish and who is not, is the objective structure of who is in your tribe or in your nation, actually. Because everybody's arguing all the time, is it civic nationalism? Is it ethnic nationalism? It's both and neither, but it follows the structure of Judaism, and which is an objective path. It's not subjective. There's a line. There is no people who are, kind of Jewish or not Jewish. It's just you're Jewish or not. And you can convert, just like you can, move to a new nation and adopt that nation. In reality, you can, but you have to truly adopt that nation. Like, you can't move there and want to change everything. And then Christianity is a cornerstone belief, and I believe that it's the most true belief, even if you don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah. The structure of who the Messiah is, or what the not who, but what the Messiah is. Christianity is most accurate, and like I said, I believe that who is also they're also most accurate, but some people don't. Good night, gents. Very deep insight, Tyler. Thank you. I'm probably going to go in a couple minutes because I said I wouldn't go past midnight anymore. Anybody ask me any final questions that you have, or we can save it till tomorrow on at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I will be streaming again. So, final questions. Everybody's got 2 minutes, 3 minutes to ask. Otherwise, I will see you guys tomorrow. That's inversion. This is off topic, but you seem like a really well-rounded, smart dude. Would you know by chance how to cure addiction? I have severe OCD, yet I have free will. It's puzzling, isn't it? We all have the things that we're trying to fix in our lives. They're usually, addictive tendencies in some way or another. So I'm not perfect, so know that. I thought a lot about it. I think that it's important to... I have this one phrase, and it's in order to change your life, you have to change your life. So if you want to cure a bad habit, you have to form new good ones. And eventually, you'll try some new good ones that you'll stick with that will move you away from your old bad ones. But you can't just stop very easily. Sometimes you can, and it's usually after something really bad happens and you have a profound change in perspective. But if you want to change your perspective before that happens, I'd probably suggest, and this is just my advice right now, you have to develop a new habit that changes how you're living. And it doesn't even have to be the cure for an addictive thing. It could be you want to, have a cleaner house. It's maybe have, people over once a week. That will help you have a cleaner house. So some things like that. I hope that helps a little bit. If not, I will think about it more, though. But Good night, everybody on YouTube. All right. 2 more minutes before I jump off. But I really enjoy, like I said, I really enjoy these streams. If you want to support the work, it's very helpful to have anyone share this. You can cut it up, you can post it, you can have clips channels. Anything like that would really help. I'm going to do this every single weeknight, other than Friday. And also, if you want to, and you can, if you can, support the project financially, which is very helpful. I believe I have 2 Patreon supporters as of last week, which is awesome. Anybody who's listening to this who supported to my Patreon, I will be contacting you. I really appreciate it, like, deeply. It's just, it's pretty awesome. I've never, just to see where I'm at now after how this started is amazing. And I'm very grateful. And I'm also grateful to those of you who can't contribute in that manner, but, you know, or don't have the time to clip things, but also just want to be here for the conversation and engage. That's hugely helpful as well. Do I believe in the Trinity, Father, Word, and Holy Spirit? Yes, I explained it, but it's actually binary degrees of freedom reflecting across an intrinsic constraint. The Holy Spirit is an intrinsic constraint. It is logic and truth, logical truth, inevitable logical truth. And then Father and Son are reflecting across that. It's 2 generations, not 3. They're not, it's, yeah. We can go over it, but I have a whole thing on it. If you want to watch my video called Sentient Singularity Theory, like, it's the second overall summary on my stream, you'll see I explain where the Trinity comes from. It's called triality in physics. It's real. And then why it's actually duality. But and like I'll explain everything about how God creates the universe and how that leads to the perspective of Trinity and how you can actually observe this Trinitarian or triality of perspective that in every field, like everything from colors to, you know, religion to theology, even within religion. So yeah, I suggest watching that, or even a video called God is a Good Theory is like the beginning of that. It's on my channel. But do I believe in it? Yes and no. I understand why we see it, but I also think that, like, it's not 3 persons, it's 2. OCD is usually displaced trauma. Lots of things are usually displaced trauma. Grateful to you too. I get more out of these types of talks than I do at church. Awesome. I'm not even going to say that's a bad thing. I mean, I listen to sermons from church, and I study with Chabad Orthodox rabbis every Monday normally. That's why, but I didn't tonight because they had to cancel, so that's why I'm streaming earlier. But, you know, you can get truth in a lot of different places. And this is one of them. But truth will always inevitably support sentient singularity theory, that there is one God, and that God is sentient, feeling, thinking, and loving. So, anyways, good night, everybody. I really appreciate everybody here, like I said, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.